Hello to yet another episode of WhickTV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about topics both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And today we have kind of a serious topic. We are going to be discussing reparations, what that is, what that might look like, whether or not it's something that we should be pursuing or opposing. We're going to get all sorts of different opinions from all sorts of different backgrounds. We're still waiting on a guest to arrive, but I just wanted to come in and say hello to my audience and thank you all for the support. I see you all. I see you, 𝕵𝖎𝖎𝖙, Lil Mole. I see you, Jenny Burns. I see you, Miss Millie. All of you subscribing to the channel. I appreciate it. For those of you who are on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. For those of you who are on Twitch, continue to be you, wonderful people. Hit that follow button. Continue to give me money. That's great. How's everyone doing today?
Good, man. Actually, I have Mike on the line, so I'm going to mute myself real
Awesome,
quickly.
thank you.
Nice.
Hey, so how are you getting to the debate? I see the
Oh yeah, you okay? Yeah, we could hear you a little bit there, but no, you're good now. So I know everyone on here except for you, Patrice. Can you tell my audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you come from, that kind of thing?
Sure. Well, originally from Chicago, Illinois, but I serve on the board of ADOS, and we are a advocacy foundation. ADOS stands for American Descendants of Slaves, and we are a grassroots organization in response to the national landscape rife of yarning racialized gaps. So we want to address the issues with a eye towards the origins of asystematic outcomes located in the institution of racism. Our organization also prioritizes reparations for descendants of chattel slavery in the United States of America.
Well, we are excited. I'm excited to have you on. I think you're going to provide a very interesting voice to this discussion. We don't usually have people who are on the ground doing the work, right? So it's nice to have not just a talking head, but someone who actually is putting boots to the ground kind of deal, getting things done. So I do appreciate you being willing to come on my show and discuss this.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Now, not all of you may know him, but I want to thank Aaron for helping to set this up. He's the one that made a lot of these contacts happen. He's the one that reached out to a lot of the guests who will be on the show today. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing that for me and taking point on that. I very much appreciate it. Can you tell the audience who you are? Because I think this is your first time on my official show, right?
It is. I've only been backstage in the vetting room the first day I came in. I'm Aaron M. Sound. I have a show that I call Look Up, amongst many things, and I interject myself into conversations that nobody asked me in their right mind to be a part of, and by way of which I extend them and take them somewhere they weren't intended to go. And that's basically my spiel. And on Sundays, I do a strange ministry called the Ministry of the Flying Pig, where we enjoy mirth, joy, silliness, and absolutely love our idiocy. That's basically what I do.
Well, we were a pleasure to have you here, and I'm curious to see
part of it.
What you'll have to say. Now, those of you who've seen my show at all know who this next guest is. 𝕵𝖎𝖎𝖙. Hi, how's it going?
It's going good, Wick. Did you want us just to give a brief intro of ourselves?
Just a brief intro of yourself, and then I'm killing time till Mike gets here, to be very clear with
He's
you.
backstage right now. Mike is backstage.
He is not backstage.
He is not backstage.
Oh. Hold on a second.
Yeah, so I am 𝕵𝖎𝖎𝖙. I run the stream 𝕵𝖎𝖎𝖙 on Twitch and YouTube, and you can also find me on Twitter. I do a lot of political debates, and I'm interested in this one because I think this is one that has been in the public discourse for some time, but only recently I think we're starting to see some political action on. So it'll be interesting to talk about.
Well, thank you for being here as always. Really appreciate you, sir. Next up, someone who hasn't been on my show in a while, but we haven't forgotten him. Not even years of therapy will help us forget the man, the myth, the legend, Karantos. Hello.
Yes, sir. How are you, buddy?
You know what? I'm all right. I'm all right. How are you? How's it over in the Destiny orbit? Are you doing okay over there?
Oh, Maron, don't call me no orbiter. I don't like that. But hey, listen, it's fun. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun. Okay, it's pretty good.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Hopefully we can get Mike in here.
He should be back there any second now. He said he was having some trouble getting back on.
Okay. Well, the show must go on. So
Yes,
let's
sir.
just get into it, okay? Reparations. I want to start with you, Aaron. Give a concise opening statement on it, and then we'll just go around and end with Patrice. And hopefully by the time we're done with that, he'll be in here. If not, though, we'll just discuss. We have 2 people for, 2 people against. It'll be fine. Go ahead, Aaron. Start us off.
Well, my idea is that it is a crime against our own nation that we don't take care of one of the oldest forms of criminal behavior that there is, which is the enslavement of a major portion of our population. And since my family has gotten reparations from a government, and the Japanese have gotten reparations from a government, and the Native Americans have gotten their own land, I would stand on the concept, even though I don't have a dog directly in the fight, so to speak, that it is it's incumbent upon us to make sure that reparations happen in whatever way they need to happen for the group that had slavery preyed upon them. As I say it, the judge has decided that the verdict is guilty, and now the parties that are guilty need to stand on the side and wait for the verdict to happen afterwards and decide what people get as a response.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. We'll see how it goes. 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙, go ahead. What's your take?
Yeah, so just a quick disclaimer before I get into it. Slavery was evil and antithetical to all my moral beliefs. That being said, there are 3 reasons why reparations are terrible, right? Number 1, they involve stealing money from large groups of innocent people and redistributing it. 2, the concept of blood guilt, that is the sins of the father are the sins of the son, is stupid. We are all born innocent. And 3, even if we accept blood debt and systemic analysis, if we go back and measure which Americans alive today benefited most from the immoral act of slavery, I think it's fair to point out that the vast majority of modern-day Black Americans would either not exist or would not be in America absent the institution of slavery. So clearly that demographic benefited the most.
Well, that's a take. We'll see how it goes. Karantos.
Wait. I know this is like opening statements, but I'd like 𝕾𝖏𝖏 to repeat the last part again. Like, who benefited the most from slavery?
Black Americans living in the United States today.
Black Americans living in the United States today benefited from slavery the most. Okay, now, while me and 𝕾𝖏𝖏 agree that reparations is pretty retarded, I don't know about that last part. I'd say, first and foremost, it's pretty fucking hard to find out who needs reparations and who doesn't. It's also pretty fucking hard to tell people that had absolutely nothing to do with slavery or who's never had ancestors that enslaved African Americans to pay for sins that they didn't commit, that their ancestors didn't commit, that they solely have to do because of their white skin color. And also on top of that, what form of reparations are you giving them? Are you just going to give them like one big ass check? Then what? What are they going to spend it on, right? If you give a demographic that is financially, very terrible, right? What the fuck are they going to do with the money? Is it actually going to benefit them? Is it actually going to get somewhere, right? Is it going into their communities? Are they actually building something that's going to last for generations instead of something that's going to get wasted in about 6 months to a year? Again, these are the things that people don't take into account when they speak about reparations, but I still don't know what Team Reparations wants, so I'll reserve judgment for later.
Yeah, we're gonna find out. Miss Patrice, please.
Yes. Well, I would like to start off first saying, that our organization is definitely focused on, and we have a literally breakdown of 12 different parts of how the reparations package will be distributed to descendants of slaves. And it's funny that the young man before me was speaking that everybody else worries about how Black people are going to spend their money. But I don't think no one else asked the Jews that or said that to the Jews, said that to the Japanese, said that to the Native Americans, how they're concerned about how it's going to be spent. But I have a breakdown here that is in 12 parts that I would like to get into further regarding that. But when you're talking about Americans descended of slaves, racism and discrimination that have choked this economy for African Americans nearly in every turn for over 400 years, right? And we're looking at how the times of like Redestruction, when the United States implemented a major distribution of land, former slaveholders to the newly emancipated enslaved. But Reconstruction, nor the New Deal, nor the Civil Rights Movement led to economic or foreclosing the wealth gap between African Americans and our white counterparts. So when you look at that in terms of all of the atrocities that was done to my ancestors, whether it be through Jim Crow, whether it be through Reconstruction, whether it be through redlining, all of these things play a major deal in even what's going on today and how it's affected us to be able to create and generate generational wealth as the way from slavery up until now, you have organizations and companies that still benefit from slavery to this day. And they're able and have been able for over 400 years to have generational wealth off the backs of my ancestors.
Well,
I digress.
that's fine. And thank you for that. We will get into it in the opening, but I wanted to give Mike TV. Hello, welcome. I wanted to give you a brief opening statement. So we're just giving our initial thoughts on reparations, and our initial thoughts on them. Then we're going to get into the discussion proper. So you are the last of us to arrive. So go ahead and give us your take here.
Yeah, well, to keep it short and sweet, I believe words matter, and the actual definition of reparations is the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. So, if we're going by that definition and nobody's making up their own definition that they're now going by, then just based off of that alone, I believe reparations is obviously something that should be done. When it comes to the American government, it's something that has been done several times over for other ethnic groups and other communities. So if we're specifically talking about African American reparations in America, I think that's long due owed.
Okay, well, with that, let's kind of get into it. And I'd ask again, if I tell you to stop talking, it's because no one can hear you because you're talking over each other. So if you have trouble getting in, just let me see your hand or otherwise indicate to me that you'd like some space to speak, and I'll do my best to do that for you. Other than that, it's a free-flowing conversation. I'll ask questions. If the audience has questions, I invite you to super chat and ask, and I'll get to them as the conversation allows. But other than that, go ahead. Reparations, gang.
I have a quick question. I guess because I've heard this a couple times now. Like everybody's bringing up the concept of, well, other people got it, so we should get it too, right? This is kind of the repeated line. Japanese got it, Native Americans got it. I, as somebody myself who opposes reparations to any group, right? I oppose it for the Native Americans, for the Japanese. I mean, how is that really nothing but an appeal to? It sort of is like you're appealing to something else that I think is wrong as an argument for why it's right. I don't think that really gets at the heart of any kind of justification for reparations. So I'm guessing my question is, like, what is the independent, like, when you bring up other groups that have gotten reparations, why is that critical for your argument as to why African Americans should get reparations?
Well,
I
first
can
off, let me
answer
just ask about that. Hold on a sec. I'm sorry, Mike, real quickly. Entomology and what you were saying, how could you have actually opposed Japanese or Indian reparations since you weren't alive during that time period? Let's start there. But secondly, Quantos, your mic is freaking muted. If you want to scream, take your freaking mic off mute. Secondly, yes, Mike, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so when I bring up other ethnic groups or other classes receiving reparations, I personally bring that up because there is a segment of the population out there that believes that reparations cannot happen because it would bankrupt the American economy, because it just isn't feasible. So when I use other ethnic groups as an example, that's just to show that it is possible. If our government actually wanted to put forth some type of reparations, they could do so because they have done so in the past. But no, the whole entire justification of reparations is not because other groups got it. That's pretty asinine.
I want to quickly respond to that. Just because, so I still don't think that pointing to like Native Americans, Jews, and Japanese Americans as getting reparations as being an argument as to why it won't bankrupt us. I don't find that very convincing. My understanding is Jews got reparations from the German government. So with with the American government, if we're talking about Native Americans, Japanese Americans, we're talking about incredibly small segments of the
We paid
population.
$55 billion in 1943 money to, or I'm sorry, 1945 money to what is now the Israeli government to start an entire nation, and then we funded
Yeah.
100 billion.
We didn't
in
owe them
military.
that money though, did we?
Yes, we did. We agreed as the @Bellflower Act with the British government to fund that as a land taking. So yes, we did actually choose that as reparations. And
morally.
I'm certainly.
Okay, I don't think Israel stands for like Jewish people in America. So I guess my question is like
How
for
can you
Jews
say
living in
that when they
America,
stand for Jewish
did the
people
U.
worldwide?
It does.
Okay, sure. So you're saying we signed some kind of agreement saying
it's not
hey.
okay, sure. The country of Israel stands for Jewish people worldwide, and any Jewish person can get a free ticket to Israel.
Right.
Is that right or wrong?
I'm opposed to all ethno-states. So in the sense that Israel's an ethno-state, I oppose that. So I don't think necessarily it's that just because we gave money to an ethno-state that necessarily means that that should be counted into whether or not we can give money to ethnic groups living within the United States. As to Native Americans, Japanese Americans specifically, these are incredibly small demographics. And the proposed amount that we're seeing here, my understanding is Japanese Americans got comparatively almost insignificant amount.
If I may
Native
interject,
Americans.
if I may interject, I want to get some actual like data here to work with. So Patrice mentioned that there is a plan drawn up. Can I ask, and because I don't know, what is the amount? Is there a dollar amount that people who advocate for reparations have in mind specifically that we're talking about, just so we have a ballpark number to work with here?
Great question.
How much suffering are we putting on, African American slavery? I'm trying to know.
By the way, I'm glad to see you figured out how to make the mic work, but that's beside the point.
Listen, I'm trying to be nice to you, old man.
I
You know what I
know.
mean? I'm trying to be respectful, but I'm about to pop off.
Just because I got the white beard doesn't make me old, youngster.
Well, I still want to know the number, if I may.
Yes.
I was trying to talk, but yeah. So if realistically, from then back during slavery up until now, currently, if you add up all of it with the interest, it's somewhere around $14 trillion. But we know, yes. Yeah, it's between 14 and 20 trillion dollars, and these come from economists that also sits on our board. So we have people from economists and so forth that sits on our board that literally is doing the footwork and the data, getting all the data of this amount. So it's somewhere between 14 to 20 trillion dollars as of today.
Is this
And real
is
quick,
this how much you're asking for? Like, go on.
OG Patrice, if I can just make a comment, I find it hilarious that as soon as you read that number, the Caucasian people on the panel start smiling, start giggling.
I know.
They start looking about, as if that number is so outrageous. But what they're not taking into account is that that's in direct correlation to the suffrage and the benefiting that the country has for the past 400 plus years. So. Yeah, it's
Listen.
very
No. Listen, slavery is heinous, right? Everybody agrees that slavery is terrible. $20 trillion? Okay, now.
14 trillion, so not quite
it's
20.
14 to 20, right? 14 to 20.
Yeah.
Like there's a 6 trillion,
Okay.
gap
I'm just
there.
I'm just trying to understand, is that's what's being advocated for as the amount to be paid, or is this this is the damages, but we will accept X as in actual reparations? I'm just trying to get clarity. That's all.
And if I can ask actually as well, is that retributive or is that just one lump sum? Or are you talking about over time? Because my understanding you're talking about over time, correct?
Correct. And again, now, like I said, I will go into later the breakdown of what that all in totality would cover for descendants of slaves. So I told you I had 12 categories, right? So when you looking at from the start of slavery in the 1600s, in the 1700s, we had the Declaration of Independence, right? All of this was enslaved throughout American history, even through the 1800s, the Emancipation Proclamation, and the 1900s to present were our Jim Crow era. So you're talking about 400 plus years until current. So keep that in mind. And we're not just talking about slavery only, we're talking about still racism and discrimination, that choked us as well. So
Redlining,
it's
the war
not
on
just
drugs, et cetera,
slavery.
et cetera.
Yeah, Tuskegee.
Exactly.
I would like to go back to what I was saying before about, I asked why Native Americans, Japanese Americans were brought up, and the response was, well, this shows that we've done this in the past without bankrupting the government. I mean, don't you agree that the amount of money we're spending here on, like, especially Japanese reparations is like nothing compared to 14 trillion?
Yeah, as it should be. It's nothing, and it actually should be more. My understanding is the actual.
So why bring up
estimation is
Japanese Americans?
207 Wait, hold on a second. Because
Why
it's
are
an
you skipping
example.
over Native Americans? I brought
Yeah.
up Japanese
Bring
and
them up
natives.
too. Yeah, bring them up too. Are they
Yeah,
14
absolutely.
trillion?
No, you're right.
Do
You're
you
right.
know
But
the
the thing
amount
is
that
the number is
Native
higher than
Americans
that.
have
It's
received?
270 trillion. It's actually 270 trillion. So we're getting off easy.
Wait,
Exactly.
270 trillion for what?
12 million lives tossed overboard and insurance claimed. Just to start. That's
But
not
who
even
the
the
fuck is going to pay that shit?
270
We
trillion.
all are. We all are. And actually, it'll be in taxation, right? Well, why don't we let OG Patrice explain? You're the one who
No,
knows.
no, I want to know how much is like one black person in America gonna get? How much is one African American descendant of slaves going to get? That's what I want to know.
Well, if you divide it
I-
up according to how many descendants of slaves that can be verified through their lineage, through the census, through their social security or their birth certificate card, because the reparations is lineage based. It's not everybody is not going to qualify for it, right?
Mhm.
So again, like I said, when we're talking about the numbers, and I'll do the breakdown of the 12 categories that ADOS is asking for reparations to be distributed. It's not just a check. It's not a cash payment check only to say, okay, here it is, divvy it up between however many, descendants of slaves that have been proven and documented, that they are descendants of slaves, right? So we know, and when we do a comparison to like Jews or Japanese or Native Americans, is because the same way they sanctioned, the same way that they implemented it, the same way that they made slavery a law. And we know that was a harsh atrocity that the government and the state never should have made into law. No one should have been enslaved. So when you talking about these things, we have to put into mind that it was sanctioned and permitted and made a law by our government.
I wanna turn the conversation a little bit in a certain direction. I want to talk about the concept of justice. A lot of people talk about reparations, and justice comes up. What does justice look like in this situation, right? What does a justice for sins against a group of people, right? What does that look like? Because again, well, you can look at me, right? I was in the group that was in power, right, during these times. But as an individual, I didn't do any of that, right? So what does justice look like for me in this case?
Respectfully, Wick, I believe
Go
you're
ahead.
incorrect.
Oh.
Just because you're Caucasian, it doesn't mean you're part of that group that was in power. In
You're not
actuality,
him.
in actuality, there was also white people who were working right alongside slaves, albeit they had a better working contract. Also, we're really not talking about just a group of people. We're talking about institutions. We're talking about corporations. There's actually banks that are alive to this day that financed slavery, that insured slaves. So we aren't just talking about white people that are alive today. We're more so going after institutions as well as corporations that benefited
Correct.
and are still
Yeah.
alive and well to this day.
Yeah.
And if I may
That's
elaborate, yeah, just to, give you an idea, we're talking about from the railroads, banks, insurance companies, i.e., banks like Wells Fargo, Chase, B of A, Citibank, all of them benefited and had slaves as insurance policies and used them as insurance policies. So they still benefit as well. So when you're talking insurance companies, you're talking like Lords of London, you're talking about MetLife, all these companies benefited. When you're talking about even your colleges and universities like Harvard and Brown, all of them benefited off the backs of slavery. The cotton plantation, the White House was built by slaves. The nation's capital was built by
Wall
slaves.
Street.
So exactly, Wall Street
And
as well.
Solidarity
You're
in time
absolutely right.
was torn down by the effects of slavery.
$10.
I wanna-
Okay,
I-
just before you
wanna-
go, Quarantos, they paid me money to
ahead.
ask this. So
Go ahead.
$10
Man,
from Justin to ask the following question. Okay, so you have a several step process that will to some degree cost around $14 to $20 trillion to complete. Once this process is complete, would the reparations be considered paid for? Would justice have been done?
I mean, I'd assume so. The fuck?
I'm sorry,
will
repeat your
never end.
question again.
And to be clear, this was from a viewer in the audience asks, okay, so you have a several step process that will to some degree cost around $14 to $20 trillion to complete. Once this process is complete, would the reparations be considered paid for? Will justice have been served?
Well, I wouldn't put justice on the live people that, that literally died, right? But it will be some form of restitution, right, for the descendants of slaves who would gain from what their ancestors went through. So let me just give you an example of the spell breakdowns that we in ADOS has broken down how we would like reparations to be paid out. So again, everybody think it's just money or a check. Of course, we would like a lump sum payment and then monthly payments. But we also were discriminated and racism was against us with agriculture. So despite being the agriculture experts at the end of slavery, Black farmers have been historically excluded from agricultural programs. So we have an agricultural department. Black businesses, Black American requires investments in business, economic uplift, and empowerment for Black people that was denied those very things. We also would like to be able to get into the cannabis business because for decades, cannabis was used to incarcerate disproportionately Black Americans. So that's a repair that have people in prison for nonviolent crime, marijuana that's spending 20 and 30 years in there. And we know that the justice system was not equally fair to Black Americans when it comes to sentencing. Climate change. The climate is regional change patterns stem from the public policies historically aimed to protecting white property values at the expense of Black communities. The criminal justice system, I just spoke of that. Black Americans has faced unequal outcomes from the criminal justice system. We want to change the currently outcome for that and to make it more equitable. Education. We were locked out of education when it came to educational inequalities for Black Americans. We must address this systemically. Environmental racism.
Why
Polluted
is the Taylor
environments
baby
harm
making
our
hand
communities
gestures?
in America. Health and nutrition, housing, immigration, infrastructure. Because if we don't have, the government provided grants for the roads, for the railroads, for even the
Got you,
very
yeah.
streets and pavement, public transit projects, utility, all of that at the expense of slavery.
Yes.
Unemployment and labor. Throughout the years, many unemployment programs excluded Blacks, and particularly by allowing their abuse for their profit. And these are organized. So that is the breakdown. And also the cash payments will look like what I just said earlier, a lump sum check and monthly payments to the descendants of slaves, as well as trust and annuities.
Okay.
Monthly payments for life?
And
are
I'm not
like,
sure. I'm not sure if
Oh
you
yeah.
mentioned healthcare,
oh yeah,
but there was also whole entire medical industries that were based off of experimenting on slaves with no anesthesia.
Absolutely.
So
We're not even
healthcare is
talking
also a
about
big one.
damages. Sorry.
I said health and nutrition, so that all goes in there.
Perfect.
Yes, there's a thing called medical apartheid, where the father of gynecology, named Marion Sims, he used slave women's, without anesthesia, to do things like hysterectomies on them, and a lot of those women died doing those procedures.
Yeah. I know that Krontos and 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 wanted to get in a little bit here, and I wanted to give them space. So go ahead,
honestly,
Krontos.
honestly, what's laughable to me is if you really want to make up for slavery, you just send all the black people back to Africa. All the descendant of slaves that you could find. You put them on a flight, first class ticket, send them to West Africa and tell them, hey, sorry you took your ancestors from your motherland. There you go. So if you truly want to pay for slavery, right, and your conscience is killing you, you just send them back to Africa, first of all. Second of all, to act as though the biggest problem that is facing African Americans in America today is the lack of reparations is laughable. The biggest problem with African Americans today in America is African Americans themselves. When it comes to who's killing each other the most, it is them killing each other the most. When it comes to who's born out of wedlock the most, the most bastard children in America are African American children. What is it? Over 70% of African American children born out of wedlock, right? When we talk about single homes, right? Most of them come from single homes. Why is that, right? And think about it. When you look at your life, the easiest way to figure out if somebody's going to have a terrible life is whether they come from a single parent household or not. And a lot of them do. That's why they turn to a life of crime. Sure, we could talk about redlining. Sure, we could talk about, all of the fucking things that happened in the past that could lead to what is going on today. But to constantly keep using that as a fucking excuse is the most pathetic victim mentality thing of all time.
Right.
When you say
Right,
I
you
am
want to
bad,
tackle this one?
no.
Okay.
When you say no. We let our OG Patrice talk for 1999 years, right? I could talk for 2 more minutes. When we look
Let
at
the
African
tether
Americans
babes
today,
talk.
You're gonna talk for as long as I think you're gonna talk,
no,
Krontos. I'm just letting you know.
Okay,
Finish
boss man.
quickly.
Allow the tether
Okay,
babes to
massa.
talk.
Okay, massa. I'm sorry, but let me pop this off real quick, right?
Wow.
When we look at African Americans, right? You have motherfuckers immigrating from third world countries and making a better life for themselves than the people that live there, the people that are accustomed to the culture, the people that know how to maneuver the lands. At this point, we got to realize that it's a mentality issue. At this point, we got to realize that these people are in this perpetual cycle of victimization, and they'll never actually succeed in anything if they constantly keep looking at themselves as the slaves that they used to be. Go
Well, I've
ahead.
got a couple questions for Quarantos. Is that his name?
Call me
Quarantos.
Q.
Q. What country did your family flee from, and what country do you currently live in?
Flee from? I mean, that's a loaded question. My family was born in Somalia.
So your family's from Somalia, and you live now in a European Western superpower, I presume.
No, the fuck I don't. You've never been to the West. I'm not planning to.
So you still live in Somalia.
No, I was born and raised in the Middle East.
So your family relocated from Somalia to the Middle East.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I have a couple questions for you, but before I say my questions, I'll start with a statement. I find it funny how a man who most likely has never even traveled to America, has never actually experienced Black American culture, speaks
Get
so
him.
negatively of it when you talk all
I'm
this
experiencing
about.
it right now. I'm
Yeah,
looking at
you gotta
guys.
let him finish.
Don't
Hey,
interrupt me.
Krontos,
Don't
you gotta let him finish, please. Go
We are
ahead.
dealing with an emotional Somali pirate who has a face mask on and everything. Just calm down. Just calm down.
Okay, brother. I'm sorry.
You speak so negatively about African
Milk his
Americans
thirst.
when your own country is in shambles. Your own country is begging for handouts from Black Americans. You guys are pirates trying to chase down European naval vessels and hope that you can capture somebody and get a ransom because your country has no opportunities. So how dare you speak about foundational Black American issues when your own country is in such terrible squalor? That's my first statement. Now, my two questions I have for you is first, why are you under the assumption that all Black folk in America came from West Africa?
Okay, so to address your statement before answering your question, first of all, it is laughable that you're trying to make fun of a black man with a country as a black man without a country, as a black man that can't even trace.
I have a
his descent
country.
of
It's called
country,
America,
right?
and I'm indigenous to these lands, which is why I asked you why you think we all come from West Africa.
Wait. So when
From
you
the
say you're
Muscogee Creek Nation by way of Oklahoma, tribal
Again,
citizenship and everything. So what are you
again,
talking
when we
about up
talk,
here?
again, when we talk about African American descendants of slaves,
Again, we're talking about a
African
Somali pirate
No,
who
no,
has
wait,
real
wait, wait,
Hey,
control.
why
hey,
are you
go.
coming
Okay,
in?
I will mute
Why?
you. I'll mute you, and then I'll mute you, and we have to go one at a time, or no one can hear what's being said. I don't mind. I don't mind the back and forth, but let's try at least one at a time. So here, I'm gonna unmute you guys, and we're
There's
gonna
not
go.
going to be a back and
Can I
forth.
come
I
up
let
with a
him get
response?
I let him get off his statement. Let me get off my statement. First
Yes,
and
you can
foremost,
get off.
right? First and foremost, it is laughable that he's trying to hop on white America's dick talking about you need money from African Americans. Listen, you're 18% of the population. Hop off the white man's dick, right? If we need money, it certainly ain't your fucking money that you're spending on the most retarded things ever. By the way, guys, do me a favor and actually look up what Black America, right? Since we don't want to say African American, I'm pretty sure African American is a touchy subject for some of these people, right? They want to say I'm American. You don't call the white man European American, so let's just call you Black Americans, right? You should go look up what Black Americans spend most of their money on, right? It isn't sending foreign aid to countries that need it, because they're spending most of their money on retarded shit that doesn't set them up for future success. Because financial literacy is something that they have absolutely no clue
Okay,
about.
okay.
Second of all, nobody was fleeing some pirates or nothing like that. Again, he comes. Black
You fled
Americans
from
are the
Somalia
equivalent
to the Middle
Black-
East.
Black
You didn't want to
Americans
live in
are
your
the
country
equivalent-
so bad that you moved to the Middle East with the Arabs and the Persians, but you're going to talk as if your country is worth
So
anything?
have you ever been to Somalia?
Somalia's entrenched patterns
No,
revolve
yes or
around
no?
poor
But-
governance,
What does that have to do with
inter-clan
anything,
conflicts,
Toronto?
and
No,
marginalization.
no,
Al-Shabaab's resilience and
Everybody has Google.
entrenchment
Everybody
comes
has
from
Google.
its atrociousness at taking
Again,
advantage
again.
of corrupt governance and clan rivalries. You guys
Okay,
exploit
perfect.
clan disputes and offer support to marginalized. Guys, you're so tribal. Your country, your country is in
Okay.
shambles.
So
You're
guys,
fighting
do me a
amongst each
favor and
other.
actually look into the
You're
fact
warring
that
with
this
each
man,
other.
this
What are you
man
talking
said,
about?
this man said, I have never been to America, therefore I have no say about what goes on with
Have you
African
been to
Americans and their
America?
culture. Yeah,
Have
this
you
man
been to
thinks-
America?
yeah, this
No,
man
that's right.
thinks he's-
No,
yeah,
that
this
he's
man
right.
thinks he's
He's
figured
right.
out Somalia because he Googled it one
Have
time.
you-
He was
have-
like,
have you
look
been
at
to
you guys,
America?
everything is terrible
Okay,
because I Googled
okay,
it.
enough. I'm calling it audible. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't
Very
care.
emotional
We're not
about
talking
Somalia.
about Somalia
I mean, I
versus
don't need to
America.
go to America
Stop.
to see that you guys are
Stop.
being
We are
bombed right
not
now.
talking today about
very
Somalia versus
emotional about your
America.
country.
I don't care. What we're talking about today is reparations. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And I want to get back on topic, if we may. Right?
You answer my question. I asked him, does he assume that all Black Americans come from West Africa? Can you answer that question?
No, not all Black Americans come from West Africa.
So then
Okay.
why did you make the asinine statement that if we want reparations, we should just get a ticket back to West Africa?
Y'all honestly mainly look like
English?
West Africans, right? And I'll probably send you back there.
So
not
you're
East
saying
Africans.
that we look like West Africans?
Wait,
so
wait,
we
wait,
should
wait,
get a
wait.
ticket to West Africa and start
Yeah.
living in that
I
country.
mean,
because
could
we
you
look
change?
that way.
No. Wait. First of all, the Atlantic slave trade mainly dealt with West Africa, first and foremost, okay? We're not going to try to act as though you were
Jesus.
pulling slaves from Somalia or from Kenya or from Tanzania, right? Most of the slaves that you pulled were actually from West Africa, right? And if we're talking about descendants of slaves, African Americans, we're talking mainly about West Africans, you fucking idiot. Also, why is a fucking dude that's clearly mixed with a whole lot of white slave fucking DNA
Says the
talking
man
to me
who's
about...
too
Bro,
afraid to
look
even
at
show
your
his
fucking
face.
skin. Look at
Says
your
the
fucking
Somali
Enough,
pirate
enough.
that
Your
fled
DNA is fucking
the Middle
slave
East.
master
Enough,
and slave
enough.
The
master and
Somali
slave.
pirate that
Oh, you
fled
talk
to the
me.
Middle East is going to talk about my ethnicity
I wanna get other people
while
in.
he wears a mask.
I wanna
While
get-
he wears a mask like the Somali pirate he is, take
All
off
right.
your mask then and let's see how you
Because the
look.
I want to.
Pirates wear
I want to
masks.
get some other
Mask.
people in. I want to
Take
get
off
some
your
other
mask.
people in.
Take off your mask and
Okay.
show us how you look. Take
Lactoid,
off your mask,
and then
Somali
Aaron.
pirate.
Lactoid, and then Aaron.
Will you
Lactoid,
take
please.
off your mask, Somali pirate? Or are you going to stay masked up?
Hey, at least my DNA is all Somali. I
Hey,
don't know about you.
He's ashamed of his country. He's ashamed
master,
of his country,
fucking,
and that's why he
slave,
went to the Middle East.
house
He's
nigger,
ashamed
right?
of how he looks.
No,
That's why
your
he's
DNA
wearing a
is
mask.
mixed up.
This
Your
man
DNA
has
is
a
mixed
lot
up.
of insecurities. This man has
enough.
a lot of self-hatred and a lot of insecurities. The fact that he won't even show his black face. He talks about my complexion when he wishes he looked like me.
Yeah, you're
And
a white boy. Ladies and gentlemen.
You guys use something called and you scrub and scrub and scrub and you scrub bleach on your skin, wishing and hoping that you can be my complexion, wishing that you can be lighter skinned,
Okay.
and you're gonna sit up here and project.
Both of you are muted. Lactoid, go ahead.
All right. Just want to take a moment to just make it very clear that the opinions that I say are my own. I don't necessarily endorse any of the viewpoints on this panel.
What do you mean, Lactoid?
Even if they happen to maybe agree on the end result, I don't endorse anybody else's language or accusations. So just want to make that
boldly, or those that hide behind a mask.
very clear. Very clear.
Does your mom use the weave, by the way, to look like?
Okay, I will mute you again. Come on, can we not give 2 fucking seconds to Lactoid, please?
Is your mother skinny and fat at the same time with 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙?
Michael, I will do it to you too.
Allow him to insult me, and I will respond.
I'm not going to allow either of you to insult each other. Please, I'm asking you. Lactoid, go ahead.
So, to get back to the topic, I think everybody here is beautiful, regardless of what you look like. Okay, regardless of your skin tone. So I just want to make that clear. Second point. In the midst of what we just heard, I think an interesting point was just an interesting statement was made that I want to kind of attach or really focus in on a little bit. Somebody just, or I guess specifically Michael, said, you people are very tribal, right? And although I'm sure this was used in sort of relation to, well, Somalia is like ruled by tribes, but tribalism has a different meaning, right? When somebody says you are very tribal, that could also mean that you attach your identity to a larger group, right? You subsume the individual into this is my people, right? My people were hurt. I was not individually hurt, right? We said Patrice said brought up the fact that my ancestors had this happen to them. There was doctors who did this to Black women in the past, right? This kind of this comparison to, well, other people who kind of look like me or share a genetic code to me, they suffered this, and because I'm part of their tribe, I suffered it as well. I think this is like the ultimate flaw on the basis of reparations, right? It assumes
you're incorrect though.
Real quick.
Never said that.
So she did bring up that example.
It's based on your
we can rewind.
Your ancestors would have been through slavery,
sure.
not just
That's what I said.
Look like you.
Okay, but when you base it off of lineage, sure, you understand what I'm trying to say. Yeah. You understand what I'm trying to say.
Not
ultimately,
someone that looked like my skin color was a slave.
You understand what I'm trying to say. What I'm pointing out is that my great whatever, they were part of my tribe, right? This is our group, and they were hurt, and that makes me hurt too, right? That's the argument that's being put
They're
forward.
part of my family heritage.
And I want this is.
I think that's a simplification.
Wait, real quick, please. So
I just need to make.
I'm opposed to this. I think this is like one of the kind of more nefarious issues. But then I think the other thing we have to realize here is we wouldn't apply this level of tribalism in any other kind of individual crime sense, right? Like if we found out tomorrow that my great grandfather murdered your great grandmother, you would never hold me responsible because I didn't do anything, right? I didn't do anything, and you were not the victim. There's this perception of as long as something happened to my ancestry, as long as the Mongolian, we can trace the Mongolians as having attacked my ancestors, as long as we can trace the Barbary the pirates from attacking my ancestors, the people there now owe me something. This is just a bizarre way to look at things, right? People don't owe each other based on we measure their lineages.
Okay. Yep.
I want to give Aaron a chance to respond, and then Mike and Patrice. Go ahead. That order.
There is just so much to unpack here, but I've got 3 main points. Number 1, it is our accountability level and responsibility to be accountable for anything that has happened in the past and to make it right in the case of a financial woe. And we have seen that again and again in history. And when we just deny it for convenience because the number scares us, that's complicity. And second, it is this attitude of trying to find an out. And I want the audience to know this, it's trying to find an out when there is none. The judge and jury is in, the guilt is in, and now it's a matter of how we do it, not if we do it. And third, the only thing that belongs on another fucking island is that fucking 𝕵𝖎 that you should take the goddamn off because it probably smells like your damn head. I'm glad you figured out the microphone. Anyways, move on.
Right.
Mike?
Wait, French, real
You
quick.
already know the mask smells like cheetah pee. Don't do that, Aaron.
Okay,
Don't do
great.
that.
His mask is disgusting, but like that's irrelevant to like what we're trying to like really emphasize here.
No, I agree. But
You're saying here that like there's no way out of it. The judge and jury are in. There is no other like justice concept in which we punish somebody who didn't do it because somebody else did.
Concept. There is no other justice concept, and all I keep hearing is the slippery slope argument. Oh, if we do this, we might have to do it for someone else, or oh, we couldn't possibly.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we generally shouldn't punish innocent people. Is that like a crazy statement?
Okay, so do we pay taxes? And
unfortunately, the government steals taxes from us. Yes.
Corporations to not pay taxes.
What?
Do we allow corporations to not pay taxes?
Are you talking? Oh my God! Are you talking about the fact that like corporations? Are you talking about the fact that? Are you talking about the fact that corporations can write off expenses?
You won't allow the people to not pay taxes for a limited period of time.
This is crazy.
No, it's not.
No, I'll explain why it's crazy. No. I'll explain why it's crazy. So C corps can write off certain expenses on their tax bill. That doesn't mean that the people who actually bring in their incomes from that corporation don't pay income tax.
We don't need to get off on this tangent.
I'd like to
Mike, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so first and foremost, like Aaron said, we pay taxes, and part of the America tax system goes towards reparations in the sense of still paying out benefits to Israel, and American taxpayers had nothing to do with the Holocaust, yet we're still paying for that.
We shouldn't.
That's one example.
Okay,
I'm giving you an example.
Why shouldn't we?
You're not the chosen people, okay?
Hey, let Mike finish, and then obviously Karatos and 𝕵𝖎 can both respond, but you have to wait till he's finished, and once he's finished, you can respond to him. Cool. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
Also, I find it pretty asinine that, again, people always speak about reparations or injustices amongst African Americans as if it was something that happened 400 years ago, and then it stopped. And then ever since 400 years ago, we've been on an even playing field and had just as much opportunities. Redlining has been going on since the late 90s. The war on drugs, where the CIA is on record as pumping drugs in black communities to separate the black nuclear family while also financing a war in the Contras, that happened not too long ago. There's still something in America called appraisal discrimination. I was a realtor since the age of 19, and I can tell you that appraisals from black families who clearly have black family photos on the walls, for some strange reason, that appraisal comes down a lot lower than if it was a white family. So there's many injustices that are still going on to this day. So again, let's leave the notion that this is something that happened 400 years ago and black folks have not been under attack since then.
One second. Let me just get this off real quick. If we're looking at like the history of what has been happening to African Americans, right? Or even when he said like, the appraisal, if it's a black family, if there's pictures of black families, then the fucking price goes down. Or if you're trying to fucking apply for a job and you have a black sounding name, then they don't accept you. You apply with a white sounding name, they accept the same fucking
I
CV,
never
all
said
that shit.
anything like that.
No, but that has also happened. I'm adding on to your retarded point. And I'll tell you why it's pretty retarded, right?
So you're adding on more discrimination and it's to negate my point somehow?
No. And I'll tell you how it negates it if if you shut the fuck up and let me finish. I know you're pretty slow, so you need direction. You need direction, right?
Can we cut the swipes, gang? Like just get to the point.
Okay, I'm trying to, so
got an
Michael,
emotional
relax,
tether
buddy.
on here.
Michael, relax, buddy.
You're the one yelling,
Michael,
buddy.
what's your black name?
You're the one
Anyways,
yelling,
as I was saying, right? As I was saying,
your name is Corantos.
As I was saying, right?
Resident Somali pirate.
If we look at the United States government and the mistreatment of African Americans since the beginning of time,
lower, boy.
Okay,
you don't need to yell, boy.
Who are you yelling at, boy? Or does it only happen when I cut people off?
Lower, boy. You don't need to yell.
Okay. Okay, so Wick, we don't cut off. We don't mute people.
I'm gonna mute you both if you don't stop.
Just
Get
don't
to your
want you
point,
to
please.
yell. Speak without
Please,
yelling.
okay,
So,
Mike,
okay, so we
please
see.
let him
Okay,
finish.
okay, double moderation. Okay, so we see that there has never been a single time, according to Aaron, Michael, Patrice, right? There hasn't been a single time in U.S. history where the government has done right by African Americans. So the first thing that they come up with is the government has to pay us 14 trillion. They didn't give them the most basic rights according to them. They didn't give them the most basic human dignity.
See,
So
I'm
the
able to
solution to
speak
that
without
is
yelling
the
like an
solution.
effeminate
The
little girl.
solution to
I'm
that
just
is
asking.
give them
I
14
guess I gotta
trillion
turn down my
dollars.
volume on my
I'm
end.
telling you,
She's
man.
the only one up here
I'm-
that's shouting like an effeminate little
Michael,
schoolgirl.
Michael, I bet you went
Why
to
are
an inner
you
city
shouting?
school, buddy.
I
I
know
bet
you're
you went
used
to
to
an inner city
shouting
school.
at the captain on the
Can I
ship.
can I
Come
say
over here. We're gonna hold
No,
you for ransom.
Aaron,
You don't need to shout right
Aaron,
now. There's no
there's
need to
too many
shout.
interrupts right now. Are you done with your
I am
point,
the captain
Karantos?
now.
Are you finished?
I'm done. I'm waiting for Aaron to speak. Okay, I respect my
No,
elder.
I just wanted to hand it off to OG because she was
Respect white
mentioned there, and I
people. I
was
know.
I
just
That's why you're
understand. I
frustrated and you
promise I can
relocated from
get people
Somalia to
in.
the Middle East.
Please,
Got it.
Mike, please, you gotta let me. You gotta let me at least
I'm sorry, Wick, go
try
ahead.
an attempt to guide this disaster of a conversation somewhere at least
Mm.
Was
somewhat
the mute
productive.
good enough work for him?
Karantos,
Wick? Can you
stop!
unmute him?
Stop!
The pirate know how to stop
Both of
yelling.
you. Oh my.
You see that?
Mm.
Okay. This obviously was a little
Hey, Wick,
difficult.
I'm not sure if you know, but in America, we refer to as kind as tether babies.
I don't
That's
know
what we
what that
call them.
means.
A tether
Yeah,
baby
nobody
is
knows
an
what that
African
means.
immigrant that fled their homeland, adopted a mindset of white supremacy, and has a lot of hatred and vitriol towards foundational Black Americans for no
No
reason.
slave
I want
masters
to-
in my fucking lineage. I promise you that much,
I
white
want
boy.
to.
Why
I
don't
want
you
to.
live in Somalia?
Okay, I want to. I stop, both of you. I want to get back to Lactoid's point of punishing people, and I want to ask Patrice specifically: do you, to those people who would see reparations as a form of punishment, what would your response to that be? So, someone thinking, why should I have my tax money go to this? Is this not punishing me? How would you respond to that? You're muted if you're trying to
Well,
talk. Oh, go ahead.
I would say that our tax money is going over to Ukraine as we speak.
Okay.
I would this money went over to Israel.
I love how
our tax
Lactoid rolls his
money.
eyes as soon as she cites an
Both
example.
of them.
where
Okay,
tax money
Karantos,
is going towards
Michael,
European
you
Man,
gotta let her speak. I'm gonna mute you both until
I'm loud.
she. And Aaron, I'll mute you too if you start speaking up too. Patrice, finish your point.
Yeah, so that's basically it. We know that taxpayers are still currently we even are being taxed on the back end for the LGBTQIA plus community when they have received reparations in the form of it. But who do you think that come from? Taxpayers' money. So
They
I
get
think that
reminded.
that is a very disingenuous argument to have. But I would like to address a couple of talking points that he said earlier when he's talking about, because I noticed that this is always used as a reason for why they feel Black people shouldn't get reparations. The first thing they say, Black on Black crime, right? So let's address that first. When you're talking about proximity and opportunity, there's Black on Black crime. There's white on white crime. There's Hispanic on Hispanic crime. There's Asian on Asian crime. They may differ in varying percentages, but crimes are mostly committed by people of the same race. So when you're talking about that, you have to look at proximity and opportunities. Now, again, he keeps stressing the fact of what Black people are going to do with the money. Well, one thing that ADOS has absolutely said, we were going to give courses to these descendants of slaves for financial literacy as well as mental health, because mental health issues have plagued our community for generations, and mental health can be hereditary. So when our ancestors were released, all of the atrocities and hardships they went through, they didn't get no therapy. There was no existence of nothing for them to to go in and seek help mentally for. So when you look at those two things, factors, when it comes to financial literacy, we will offer our services as well to descendants of slaves. But again, I must say, why do every other race worry about what Black people are going to do with their money
Because
when
you're
we're
trying to
not
get them to
worried
pay
about?
for it.
Let up,
Golly.
Baby. Let her speak.
Oh my God. Speak up for the Black
Well,
woman.
I want to see
Go ahead.
Lactoid's response. Lactoid was addressed a little bit in the first part of that.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. So,
Oh,
and
finish.
I will end with this. I will end my plane with this. When you look at, well, as of 2019,
You're breaking up. Can you repeat that, please? You're roboting out. Can you repeat from
oh,
I
I'm
will land
sorry.
my plane with this? No, it's fine. No one could hear you. That's all.
Yeah, I just wanted to say when it comes to the wealth gap and closing the wealth gap, when we talk about Black Americans who is 8 times behind the 8 ball and have been for 400 years versus our white counterparts. And this is just as of 2019. And a lot of and the opportunities that Blacks wasn't given. Same way with the Homestead Act. The money was given back to the slave masters. It wasn't Black people when they were released from slavery, they didn't get the 40 acres and a mule. And it was written into the law by Abraham Lincoln, right? But we didn't get it, the slave masters got it. So when we talk about a debt that is owed, we have to look at it as I don't care how much money you have or how much money you don't have. If I owe you $20, I owe you $20. And it's not my business to worry about what you do with it. Very peculiar that every other race always is concerned about what Black people are going to do with their money. We are 14% of the population, and we only 1.2% of the wealth. And guess what? The majority of the wealth come from celebrities, rich people. So when you're talking about your average Black Americans who are of slaves, we're nowhere in that 1.2%, right?
Fair.
So I just wanted to say that, and I'll land my plane.
Okay, excellent. Before we go on, before Lactoid responds, and then I'll get you into Karantos. Don't worry, and you too, Aaron. Money. People have paid me money, so I'm going to ask these things. Mudit Agarwal for $5 asks, if universities like Harvard give free education to descendants of slaves, would you count that $100,000 ish fees per person towards reparations? Like, would it be acceptable? And I'm rephrasing at this point. Would it be acceptable for the reparations to come in the form of non-direct checks? So, for example, like programs such as free Harvard education for ADOS individuals. Would that be at least acceptable to playing into the $14 to $20 trillion? What are you thinking?
Are you asking me?
To
Are you asking
Patrice?
me?
Well,
Oh,
to
yeah.
that side, to Patrice, to Mike,
if
to Aaron, to this side of things.
if I can answer real quick, super short, and then I'll give my time to OG Patrice and Aaron. But I'd say that's part of it, but that shouldn't take out of what the United States government owes. That should directly be correlated to what Harvard, the institution, owes the Black American populace. Actually, Harvard has already set up a $100 million endowment fund because they realized that the campus was built by slave labor. They benefited heavily from slave labor. So that's a perfect example of what I mean when I say it's about institutions and corporations paying what they owe, not necessarily taxpayers or everyday American citizens.
And just a follow-up question on
Right.
that, though, just for my own edification. So, if the reparations came directly from the corporations themselves that were benefited, the railroads and the other the healthcare institutions that you mentioned earlier, these things, would that be acceptable? Does it have to come from the government?
Oh no, I think it's very acceptable, and I don't think any foundational Black American would say it's not acceptable to receive compensation from corporate entities that directly were involved with and benefited from the slave trade and are still alive to this day. I mean, I'm not sure how many of you guys are businessmen, but a corporation is recognized as a living, breathing entity. So if this living, breathing entity is still alive to this day and their foundation is predicated on exploiting the slave trade and slave labor alike, then yes, they should pay their share. And I think any Black American would accept that as part of the reparations
And
package.
that plays into, and I don't mean to monopolize the time here, but that does play into the next question that was asked for also $5, and it plays, these are tied together. Frozen Knight asks, I would like an answer to the last question, the one asked about if reparations will consider things done, and to kind of rephrase that, at what point would you say that a corporation like Harvard, for example, who did that endowment, are they done, right? Is that enough?
No.
Is there a point
not
where
even- no,
it's like, is there a point, right, where we say, okay, the books are square, like we balanced the ledger here, we have paid our due, justice has been done? Is there a point, and what does that look like?
I think they would have to pay something in perpetuity. I believe it can be something as simple as either a free tuition or a subsidized tuition for people who meet the entrance examination requirements. But I think that there would have to be something long lasting through the generations, in direct correlation of the generational subjugation that went on.
So, and
when
to
we
be
speak
clear,
just solely of Harvard.
perpetuity means pretty much forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I'm saying, if you can
yeah.
if you can verify that you're a descendant of slavery, I believe many of these Ivy League institutions should have some kind of program or something set up in perpetuity.
I'm curious to Aaron and to Patrice if you have the similar answers here. What do you think about those questions?
Similar answers. I just like to add on to that is that there needs to be financial literacy education across the board. There needs to be financial literacy, meaning teach people how to utilize their money, because 60% of America, as it's pointed out to me in the chat, 60% of Americans don't have financial literacy. And that is comprised mostly of the African American community, and that's on purpose. So I think educating financially, taking care of the health care issues that have been caused by the inner city being, put in a disparate situation on purpose by landowners and by the redlining. I think there's so many things that the corporations and the education systems do play a role in, both in the community standard, in the social standard, and also in the give back side, where they have reaped the rewards of hundreds of years of wealthy white people funding them on the backs of slavery.
When is there a point when the ledgers, the books are balanced and the ledgers are square?
That is not for me to decide. That has nothing.
If there was ever a moment where I believe we can say that the ledger is square and everything's settled, just speaking off the top of my head, the first thing that comes to mind is maybe once we've had 50 plus years of the Black family household income being on par with the white family's household income.
Okay.
Once we've seen that from at least a few generations, 50 plus years, then I think we can start to say, okay, maybe there's some catching up. Maybe there's been some rectification.
Okay, that's fair. And I just want to give Patrice a chance to answer the same question. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you please repeat
Sure.
it? It was actually a long question.
I understand. I understand. So the first part of that is, in your opinion, does the reparations have to come from the government itself, or can they come from corporations or other private institutions or entities? And second, at what point, right, or if there is ever a point, in your opinion, do you think that this will be done? That the books are balanced, the ledgers are square, and we are settled. We have settled the debt.
I absolutely think that education, it absolutely should be a part of it, and the government, of course. But we have to look at even the state. The state funded, especially during the railroads time, in maybe like around 1833. The state funded the taxes and funded the slaves, and Black laborers built the railroads. So when you look at that, it can also be state involved as well. But I also want to say too, in closing, I think that a public apologies, from the United States of America would be applicable as well. When we look at how they apologize for the atrocities done to these other races of people that have gotten reparations, that the president has literally, or someone in Congress have literally read off a public apology for the atrocities that was done to them. So, will it ever be 100% justice? Absolutely, probably, absolutely not, but we're just saying we
Can you
are
at least put
entitled.
forth an effort?
Yes, thank you.
I
Can you
want
at least
to.
attempt to
Make
rectify?
Yeah.
like we care about our fellow citizens, brothers, families, cousins.
I want to give
And
oh,
actually, on that point, I have a quick question, if I may.
briefly. If you have a question, go ahead. But I wanted to get Lactoid and Kratos' opinion too. But go ahead, ask your question. I'm curious.
You know what? I can definitely hold off on my question until they finish. That's fine.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, like to ask Kratos and Lactoid directly, right? Do you not think there is any debt held by either the government or these institutions towards the atrocities of the past? Do you not think there is anything owed at all? Would you be opposed to even like an apology or something like that? What do you think, gang?
Lactoid, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I want to address the question, but I also, before, there was a couple points that were made that I feel almost an obligation to address as well. So I'll ask the question, or I'll answer the question directly. There is no debt held whatsoever by the U.S. government. There's no debt held whatsoever by any innocent people. It's an interesting question as to if you can trace, which, I mean, I'm sure all of them have reincorporated by now. I don't know of any institution that was like the legal entity was around at the time of slavery that is around today. Besides Lloyd's of London was brought up, there might be like a few kind of abstract organizations. I don't know what percentage. Like I said, most of them have reincorporated. They're like a different entity. I don't know exactly. I'll have to like take a look at that. If there's like a succession of shareholders that are all agreeing to hold the debts of the prior generation, when they buy that stock, then there actually might be an argument there. I'd be interested to take a look at that and see how that would actually play out. I really want to address, though, a couple things that were said. When you ask the question, what about, isn't this a punishment, right? And this, by the way, this is the recurring theme here. Isn't this a punishment to innocent people? The only response that we keep getting is a whataboutism to other injustices. And I want to point out, this is whataboutism tactics, right? Like, you could use to justify any government spending. Well, why not spend $30 trillion on a giant tower in the middle of Nebraska? Well, that doesn't seem like a good use of money. Why would you take everybody's money to do that? Well, hold on. We spend money in Ukraine. We spend money doing this. You're telling me we can't spend money doing this? Well, no. The point is, in order to justify like government spending, because it requires taking money from people, like there needs to be like a firm, pragmatic justification. And just pointing to the fact that we spend money in other ways that I often I disagree with isn't an argument about why we should spend money this way. Okay. First of all, so every point about Ukraine or any other demographic, that's a whataboutism that's irrelevant to the point. Second of all
the other points you've made.
It's like I hit second, right? So I'm not skipping the other points you make. I'm going in them as to what I have an issue with.
As if our stance on
let me finish, buddy.
Solely on what other ethnic groups have received. That's false.
Did we just let you guys talk for like how long? Come on. Let me
expecting you to qualify.
Let me address.
Go ahead.
Qualify what statement? That whataboutisms to other policies isn't an argument as to why we should spend money on this policy?
Whataboutism with a whataboutism. So clarify.
Come on, exactly.
Whataboutism is what you guys are saying.
And the sad part is
we're asking a direct.
Hey, stop! We can't hear him. Lactoid, finish, please. Lactoid, finish.
Yes, thank you. We are asking a direct question. Are you concerned at all with the fact that this is going to be taking money from innocent people and giving it to other people? And your response is, well, we take money from innocent people all the time. We buy guns for Ukraine. Yep. We do this. We do that. Why can't we do this too? Just because we waste money and spend it immorally in other ways doesn't necessarily mean, that's not an argument for why we should do it this time.
No,
it's a complete non-sequitur.
Okay.
You can address me. You can address me when I'm done.
Lactoid, go ahead.
It is a
be brief though. Be concise, because Kratos needs in there.
I'm trying. There was a lot of bullshit that was said, so I'm trying to be concise. Okay, it's a non sequitur.
Your opinion, there was bullshit that said.
Of course, it's my opinion. I'm not speaking about your opinion.
Okay, we gotta. Okay, it's gonna take 5 times as long if we keep interjecting. Lactoid,
trying to silence me
briefly.
So that's the first point. The second point, 40 acres and a mule, that was not law. That was never written into by Lincoln. That was never a promise made by Lincoln. General Sherman made the suggestion about this happening. He had no legal authority to bind the U.S. government to 40 acres and a mule. People attach themselves to that because, hey, you have a U.S. official saying that, But no, just because he's a general doesn't mean that it was U.S. law. So when there was a statement, hey, it's U.S. law. No, that's not the case. Third of all, multiple times now, the wealth gap, the parity between black and white Americans is like constantly brought up. My question is, why do you expect equity? Why is there the expectation of equity between racial groups in the U.S. because of slavery? Why don't you look at, did slavery increase generational wealth among black Americans today compared to Africans, right? If we're measuring the impact of this action, when you look at the overall wealth of black Americans, why are you comparing it to white Americans? Why aren't you comparing it to Africans where black Americans would have been absent slavery? It doesn't make any sense.
Because not all black Americans come from Africa, dumbass.
Wait, let me get on.
Jesus Christ, you guys just cannot address my point.
Literally addressed it. And I'll repeat myself. Not all black Americans come from Africa, you dumbass.
That's pretty
I'm
much
obviously talking about the descendants of slaves.
Good one.
Do you realize that there were people that were enslaved in the Americas that were indigenous to the Americas? Are you not aware that there are black Native Americans?
Are we talking about black reparations or not?
Wasn't it African American descendants of slaves?
Okay, so it's
this person is literally from an organization. There's a person here from an organization, 𝕾𝖍𝖎, which is dedicated to specifically giving reparations to black Americans who descended from slavery.
Michael, it's in the name, you slow ass motherfucker. It's in the name. African Americans descendants of
Somali
slaves.
pirate Tether, baby,
idiot.
that fled Somalia to go live in the Middle East, and now he's too ashamed to show his face.
This guy's.
All right,
now
Tether,
we're
baby.
talking about the Mexicans.
Go on
now
at
we're
it,
talking
Tether,
about
baby.
the South
Shout out
Americans.
to Mike some more. I like the way you shout, boy.
Anyways,
I like the way you shout.
Wick, to answer your question, the United States government owes black Americans absolutely nothing, not even a fucking apology. But I actually want to press _.
Why do we
No,
give
wait.
Somalians
I want to
$600 a
stop.
month when you flee your land and come to
Stop.
America?
I want to ask
Do you think
Karantos
that you
directly. Let me
pirates
ask
shouldn't
him.
get $600 a month from our government?
Let me ask Karantos, please. Karantos, why do you not think they don't owe some form of apology? The government. Why?
Because it absolutely serves nothing but to fucking try to humiliate and disrespect the fucking government that's protecting your dumbass and allowing you to live in a fucking country that has provided for you more than you would have probably ever fucking got, first of all. Second of all, it serves them no purpose. It doesn't further their goal in any way, shape, or form. It does nothing for them except to say, them apologizing is an admission to guilt. This government is apologizing. Therefore, you owe us X, Y, and Z, 1, 2, and 3. It's stupid. It's just an empty gesture, right? Especially from a government they believe to be fucking terrible since the beginning of time. But you know what, Lactoid, why is the white boy talking? Lactoid, I want to press you on something, right?
I'm talking to my chat. We're live right now.
Mute yourself, dumbass. Okay, Lactoid.
Good.
You keep cringing, although you said the most cringe thing of all time. You said slavery was the greatest thing to happen to black people in America because without slavery, they would have been in Africa and their quality of life is way better in America than it is in Africa. Therefore, slavery was good to them. I want you to actually elaborate on that. I want you to go into, because I think that's fucking retarded, but I actually want to hear from you. Go ahead.
It's simple, right? We consider a counterfactual. What would happen if slavery never existed? There obviously would not be American descendants of slaves in America, right? So where would they be? They'd be in Africa, where every study ever shows it's the worst place to live.
And you're taking on the assumption, first of all, you're taking on the assumption that Africa would be the exact same way it was without the European scramble for Africa, without colonization, without the Atlantic slave trade. You're assuming that Africa would be the same way it was without the white man getting involved.
I can't say it'll be the exact same. I mean, there's some arguments that it would actually be worse without colonization. Some areas. You guys can laugh. You guys can laugh.
The lawyer doesn't know.
I mean, who brought antibiotics there? We can laugh. You can look at population booms. You can look at infrastructure investment. There's different things. There's different things you can look at. Sure. Regardless. So the counterfactual of doesn't actually even require Africa to be exactly the same. You can look at places in Africa such as East Africa, Southeast Africa, where there wasn't actually a massive involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. Yet those countries are either the same or actually even worse off than a lot of West African countries, and even the country that was not particularly
invaded.
Let me finish. I will address it. Even the country that was not particularly colonized, with exception to a short stint from
Which
Italy.
country in Africa are you saying was not
Ethiopia?
colonized?
Brother.
Ethiopia was not colonized. Neither was Liberia.
Ethiopia was not colonized. They were occupied by Italy for a short period
Oh,
of
they
time.
weren't colonized.
Which I
they
want
were
to point out. I want to
occupied.
point out the
Wow.
first thing.
Oh.
I want to point out. Hey, hey, hey,
First
hey,
of all,
hey,
stop,
hey,
Darius.
hey,
You're
I'm
new.
talking.
Look, hold on, Darius. Just real quick before you go on, Darius. I'm bringing you in as a favor, right? This is already a contentious thing. You can't just come in and start shouting like that, brother. You gotta wait, and we will get you in. We will get you a turn and a seat at the table. But you work with me here, please.
By the
Hello?
way, I actually have a stream I have
Excuse
to get
me.
to and prepare for,
yes.
so I'm going to turn off the panel. I think these my colleagues are more appropriate and can speak at a wider topic. And thank you for having me, gentlemen. It's been a spirited debate. I appreciate
Next
you
time,
much.
Aaron.
Have a great
Yeah,
day.
see you in a minute.
Yes. And I
Okay.
I just want to say I have to go to I think it was a very interesting conversation.
Thank you for being here.
Going to argue with anyone. I just want the people, if it does not apply to you, if it does not represent your race of people, I don't understand why do you have skin in the game? It should not be a concern of people and of certain people that wouldn't even qualify for the reparations, right? And also, I want to address the issue of what he said about the going back to Africa situation. I would just say to you, for us as Black Americans, we were born here, so we are Americans, right? So when we talk about original, who would go back to their native land, where would you go? Where would anyone? Because no one is the originals from here. The natives were here first, and it was colonized by and pilgrim by our white counterparts. So when you talk about us that had an absolute wipe of existence, when we were brought, my ancestors was brought over here on the transatlantic slave, we were ripped of our culture, we were ripped of our language, we were ripped of our spirituality, we were ripped of our names, and we now carry the name of the white slave masters right to this day. Right? So I just want to say in closing, if you don't have a skin in the game, I don't understand. If you don't qualify for reparations, if you're not going to be an ally, I would just like to say have several seats, sit down, and keep your mouth closed. Now I land my, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Of course.
And I would thank you for the invite. And I have to go now. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you
Patrice,
for taking time out of your
Patrice,
time.
I appreciate
I
you.
Do you have
really
one quick?
just no. Let me. She has to go. Let me just thank her for coming on. I'm sorry it got a little contentious. Right, this is a debate. But hopefully we can have you on again in a more
Absolutely,
calm
and
format.
our fight with the 𝕬𝖏 advocacy is to absolutely take this bill to Congress. So that's our fight. I'm not going to sit on a lot of panels arguing with people about the what ifs. Like I'm literally boots on the ground
I understand.
with my situation with 𝕬𝖏, and we are going to Congress no matter who is in the presidency at the next election, and we're going to ask for this bill to be passed. We're going to fight, because if we don't fight for something, we'll fall for anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have
See
a
you
great
later,
day.
OG.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Hey,
Okay.
the only thing that I was going to say here, Wick, and this is what I was trying to get it to Mike,
Please.
was that colonization is not the same thing as occupation, right? And Ethiopia is one of two African countries that were never colonized. Liberia being the other. They fought off colonization from the Italians, and when Italy tried to conquer Ethiopia again, they were occupied, but they were still able to stave off colonization. They were only occupied for 8 years.
Okay, and that's important.
France, who was colonized, compared to France, who was occupied by the Germans for like 10 years.
Okay, that's important to my. I was in the middle of a point, right? That's important to my point because when you look at Ethiopia, a country that was not colonized, and when the Italians invaded and occupied, the very first thing they did was end slavery. You can look into that as well. You don't see like a significant compared to West Africa. You don't see a significant improvement in quality of life or Human Development Index or any of these measurements. And the reason is obvious. Whenever you have like a technologically behind like third world country, they're not going to be able to match the living standard of a first world nation, right? And so, yes, in the counterfactual, I think it is more than reasonable to assume that the quality of life, even absent slavery, would be better for people in America as opposed to Africa. By the way, this is not as big of a jump as the jump that people who want reparations ask you to make, because that in of itself assumes a counterfactual, right? It's assuming that if slavery never happened, that Black Americans would be better off, when the reality is they wouldn't even be here in America.
Lactoid, if you're claiming right now that African Americans benefited from slavery, it is the best thing to happen to them, because if they were in Africa, they'd be living in dumps, then why are you also holding the position that it was abhorrent, it was terrible, I don't wish it onto them? Because right now you're holding two positions that don't meet eye to eye, right?
No, because
You're
I'm
saying that it was... Go ahead.
Right, I'll explain. I'm opposed to slavery on principle, right? The concept of forcing other people to work for you against their will, whether through stealing the end result of their product or by actually making them make something, that is a wrong thing to do. I don't necessarily care who it benefits at the end course, right? Like, for example, if we could, let's say hypothetically, we could we could prove for a fact that a genocide led to one person becoming wealthy. Like, they benefited even though a genocide was wrong.
Okay. I want to get Mike in here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick statement because apparently we're arguing semantics, and because Ethiopia wasn't colonized, it was occupied. I mean, I've found some information here because, again, we do have the World Wide Web at the tip of our fingers. It says here, considering it's essential to the success of their economies, the imperialistic European nations avoided the outright colonization of Liberia and Ethiopia, the only two African countries they considered viable players in the trade-based world economy. However, in return for their apparent independence, Liberia and Ethiopia were forced to give up territory, agree to differing degrees of European economic control, and become participants in European spheres of influence. So when you say they weren't colonized, they were only occupied, they were still subjugated to some of the same things that a colonized country would be subjugated to.
So the only thing that I was going to add to that, Mike, was that, okay, this is my argument, but being occupied for 8 years is not the same thing as being colonized for 50 years, or in some cases of some African countries, over 300 years. If you look at Belgium, South Rhodesia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, or the western parts of Africa, some of these places were colonized up until the 1970s, 1980s, and they began colonization during the 1500s. So Ethiopia only being occupied for 8 years, sure, they were subjected to subjugation, but that's not the same thing as saying, hey, you're going to be outright colonized for 2 or 3 centuries.
You're right. You're right. One is much less severe than the other. I'm just pointing out the
Yes.
fact that they were still colonized to a degree. I mean, it says that it says right here that Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1895, and it wasn't until May 5th, 1941, when Selassie was restored to the Ethiopian throne, that independence was regained. So,
Okay,
that's still quite some time.
Who ended slavery in Ethiopia?
And also, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, let's say there were 2 countries out of the dozens and dozens of African countries that weren't colonized at all. What does that have to do with the topic at hand? How does that prove anything to substantiate your claims? If 2 countries out of dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens weren't colonized.
Right. The reason is because it lends credit to the counterfactual, right? When you look at a continent that is considerably behind at the time of the Enlightenment in terms of technological and social development, of course, they're not going to be on par with a country like the United States or other Enlightenment Western values, or values and countries that embody those values, like the United States, right? You can't tell me that currently in a first world country, even minorities living there are living better than Africans are living in Africa on average.
No, Lactoid, let me ask you this. When did that start? When did it start that America is a better place for Black people or Black Africans than Africa was? Because you can't say that in slavery times. You can't say in slavery times it would have been better for them to be in America than to be in Africa.
Not in slavery times.
And you can't say that through Jim Crow. You can't say that through redlining. You can't say that through discrimination and segregation. You can't say that, hey, America was way better for them than Africa where they would have been free.
Well,
So right
okay,
now I
but we have
understand. Well,
evidence.
hold on. Let me finish my point, brother. Let me finish my point. Right now you're saying that, hey, I'm opposed to the concept and principle of slavery because, you know, I'm against fucking people doing shit for free against their will, blah, blah, blah. Sure. But at the same time, when you say, hey, it was good for these people, and when we're saying these people, we're not talking about one person, because you used an example of genocide benefiting one person. No, we're talking about millions at this point. You're saying it was good for them and it actually benefited them in the long run, aka in modern times. So why are you also uncomfortable? Because you're pussyfooting around this, you're fence sitting. Why are you uncomfortable saying, hey, you know what? Slavery was a positive. Slavery was good for African Americans. Why don't you just say that?
I've said it
Okay, but
multiple
hold on
times,
for a second.
Torontos.
So
Can I
okay,
just
so
say
it's
that real quick, like George? Oh, Jesus Christ.
It was an immoral action, right? So this is the point that you're not getting, right? I'm not interested necessarily in like the maximizing the well-being of any group of people. It just is the case that when you compare Black Americans living in the United States, they are significantly better off than Africans.
And does that justify the entire history of slavery? No, you'd agree.
It doesn't justify
Okay.
it, but how are you going to claim
So then your
damages if you weren't hurt?
No, then your argument wouldn't make any sense. If it doesn't justify
I don't care about this. Darius.
It wouldn't make any sense. Like it wouldn't
If
make
you
any
don't
sense.
have damages, what are you going to claim? You're better off.
Darius.
Listen, I'm making the white boy's argument better for him. Michael, come in.
Darius. No, I want to hear from Darius right
This
now.
is amazing.
I want to hear from
Okay.
Darius right now. Darius.
Okay, the only thing that I was gonna say is, okay.
Well,
even-
can I
we
ask
haven't
you
been-
before you say? I have a question for you
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, man.
What is your stance on reparations? We don't actually know it, right? So you got here a little late.
Oh.
I'm curious what you think. Is reparations justice? And do you think that people should get reparations, specifically
So-
American descendants of slaves?
So because we live in a Western democracy and we have a representative democracy, we don't live in an authoritative regime, right? So because of that, we have to go through the path of the least amount of resistance or the path of the least amount of bloodshed to maximize how we go about engaging in redistributive policies, right? So the descendants of slaves, right, are going to be disproportionately more likely to be poor than other people are here in America. So if we want to rectify sociohistorical and sociopolitical inequity that have plagued the Western African descendants of slaves, then the only thing we have to do is, because I'm a SOCDEM, just giving you that
You
background.
cut off at the only thing we have to do is, and then it went silent.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So the only thing we have to do is help poor people. If you help poor people, you're disproportionately going to help the Western descendants of slaves.
I want to get Mike's response to that, because that is a good point, right? A good question. It seems to make sense, but I'm curious what Mike would say to that. Like, what?
Kind of
why
had this
not?
conversation with him before. Instead of reparations for a specific ethnic class or specific group of people that can trace their lineage to slaves in America, he believes that we should just do more social services and programs to benefit all poor working Americans. And I think that's asinine at best. I mean, and for example, the number one point of contention that I had when I spoke to him last time about it was this: how do we quantify whether or not a person is poor due to their own life choices versus being poor because of something systemic?
The irony that you could
slavery
use
in
the exact
America.
same argument for the African American shit. What the fuck? How
There's
could
the
you
tether
prove that it
baby
was
jumping
because of
in.
their slavery? Wait, how
Want
could
to
you
stop
prove that it was
babbling
because
like
of
a
their
baboon?
slavery?
Want to stop babbling like a baboon?
Oh my god, this white boy slow as hell. Go ahead.
There's the
Go ahead,
tether
Jeremy.
baby that's too
Let me
afraid
ask.
to-
Let me ask. Stop.
Actually,
Stop. Let me ask you directly, Mike. So, given the fact that, if right, you had to choose, and it came up to a vote, for whatever reason, reparations wasn't going to get through, right? It was just dead in the water. But a bill for a universal basic income, right? That would give X amount of money to all people making under $50,000 a year. Would that not be at least a start towards reparations? Why would that not? Because it would like help alleviate some of the suffering of Black communities, would it not?
guess it would alleviate some of the suffering, but no, I don't think that would be qualified when it comes to a reparations discussion. Reparations is about repairing or making whole an atrocity that was done in the past. So just to say that everybody who's poor right now gets universal basic income, that doesn't specifically atone for any atrocity that was done towards slaves in America. And if I may, it's kind of
Please.
similar to how affirmative action was hijacked by white women. You know, affirmative action started out like it was something that was going to help black folks, and then it turned out other minority classes and white women, more specifically, were the ones benefiting from it the most.
I want to quickly, I want to address that because that was stupid. But I want to talk to Corantos really quick.
Stupid.
Corantos, let me ask you a question.
You can't say
maybe this will, I guess, like elucidate my idea a little
can
more.
you address, like, look, Lactoid, if you're gonna start by calling him stupid, please address
The
him
idea,
first.
I'm not calling him stupid. What he said was stupid. When he said, so we're
Part
looking at,
was
yeah,
stupid.
there are more white women than there are black people. So overall, more white women did benefit. But when you look at a per
It's
capita
relative
basis,
proportion.
there's Harvard data on this. When you control for race, race is like one of the number one. It is the number one deciding factor when it comes to like weighted admissions, right? If it wasn't, right, currently, we have the data from Harvard. If it wasn't for race consideration, 2/3 of black applicants would have not gotten in. Literally a third
that
of
white
black
women
applicants would have
benefited
gotten into Harvard
disproportionately.
absent affirmative action. Okay.
Hey,
So
King Solomon,
why I
thank you
said-
for the raid.
That's why I said that was stupid. Now, Corantos, when you say like
you admit that
we-
white women benefited
brother,
disproportionately.
not
from affirmative
disproportionately, not disproportionately. They benefited
You can
more
cite my
because there's more of
sources.
them.
Anybody can do
Because
a
there's more
simple
of them.
Google search
Because yes,
and find
search that. I'm not like on the
verifiable
pedestal
research
defending white women. Who
institutions
cares?
have
Who
said
cares?
that white women have benefited
So,
disproportionately.
Corantos, when
Are
you
we supposed
say
to believe the
when you
research, or are
when
we supposed to
why
believe some
whenever
random
I
white
talk,
guy
you
that
have to
goes
talk
to
too.
Wick,
I've noticed this like happening multiple times. I make a
We're
point
having
and then
a
this guy chimes
conversation.
in.
You try to address what I said.
I
and call it
think
stupid.
Wick
I'm
is
expecting you to
allergic to
stand by
muting
that.
Michael. That's what I think it is like.
I've
Wick is
muted
allergic to muting
all of you at some point,
Yeah.
except for Lactoid.
Yes,
Lactoid's the only one who
Christ.
hasn't gotten a mute
yeah.
yet. But
Wick,
You
you
can't
muted me
stand by
when
your
Michael
points. You start
interrupted
crying.
Lactoid.
You start begging
Anyways,
to Wick.
Wick,
Wick,
Lactoid, you wanted to ask
mute
me a
Mike,
question. Go
Wick.
ahead.
Mike is making me stand by what I say, and I can't stand by it. Mute Mike, Wick, please. Come on, guys. Act like men, not children.
By the way, I think you're trying to overcompensate for your lack of melanin by
That's
you
the
know,
tether
stop,
baby
stop,
that
stop,
refuses
stop,
to
stop.
show his face.
You need
All
to
right.
relax.
All right.
This
That's
guy
the
said,
Somalian that fled to the Middle East and wants to
this guy
talk about
said,
foundation
I'm
of Black
against
American
affirmative
nationalism.
action. I'm against any
That kick's
sort of
working
thing
for
that
you.
benefits poor people because
Well,
guess
guys,
what?
I think he'll
Those
probably
poor
show his
people would
face
include
once
white
the
people.
skin
Those
bleach
poor
Okay.
people
takes
would include
effect,
white
and once
women.
his
I don't
we've
like
all
that.
had our
either.
fun.
Then
We've
he'll
all
show
had
his
our
face.
fun.
Anyways, Lactoid, you wanted to ask me something. Go ahead.
Just get a little bit
I-
more, and then you'll have the balls to show your face, I'm sure.
Okay,
Oh,
I would like to ask you a question. So when white people, like white liberals specifically, when they say, look, slavery was an institution that benefited white people the most. When they say that statement, they're not necessarily saying that slavery was a good thing, right?
Yeah, fair.
So why do you think that I'm saying that slavery was a good thing when I say that it benefited black people the most?
If you believe that something leads to a positive change in a group of people's lives, even if you are against the thing on principle,
Yeah.
you still should stand by it and say, listen,
No.
in principle, yes, you should. Yes, you should, or else you're a hypocrite.
No, not at all,
You
Corantos.
absolutely are. No, because think about it. If you're telling me that, hey, if I add this thing into these people's lives, even though I may not fucking like this fucking thing, and it benefits their life, then it is good for them.
No.
And
If you're the
and I
Corantos,
support it in that instance.
No.
You support slavery in the instance of African Americans because it helped them not be in Africa currently.
so Corantos, if you're the child of if you're the child conceived of rape, can you still be against rape?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because rape is wrong for a lot of reasons, even if you are the one that happens to exist because of it.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. Those two are not analogous. Because
They're-
first of
they're
all,
directly analogous.
they absolutely are not. Because right now you're talking about somebody that was born out of rape,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Them talking about it. I'm pretty sure you're not from like a slave background or anything like that. Yet you're trying to say that they had it good.
Exactly.
No, I would say what I would say.
Imagine I beat
No.
his
Let
mother,
Quantos,
I
let me
rape his
explain.
mother, I steal his family's wealth, and then 50 years later he learns about this atrocity. Would 𝕾𝖏 then say, "Oh, well, my family's doing better, so I think we really turned out good," or would he be
Yes.
saying, "Damn, you guys shouldn't have done this to my mother"?
I would say both. I would say both. So, Karantos, if I was talking to somebody who was conceived of rape, I would acknowledge that, like, because if the rape didn't happen, they wouldn't exist. That rape benefited them, like, in the absolute sense. But then, second of all, the rape itself was an evil act, and just because it benefited them doesn't make the act just. The ideal scenario would be that the rape never happened and that they never existed. Honestly.
Yeah.
Well,
A little, a
okay.
little bit of a sidetrack, but I do have a question. I'm curious what Mike's answer would be. So when it comes to distribution, right? American descendants of slaves who receive the money, right, of reparations. I'll use my family as an instance. I've done a lot of genealogy work, or my family has. I didn't do it. In my family tree, there are slaves that I am directly descended from, but there are also slave owners that I am directly descended of. Do I get money?
Say that you're a descendant of slaves, or you
Both.
being
I'm a descendant
European
of both
immigrant
slave owners and slaves themselves.
Oh, I know. I'm trying to say, when you say descendant of slaves, are you talking about European migrant slaves? Or are you talking about black slaves?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I just know that in my family tree there are both slaves and slave owners, right? So do I get?
So hold on. So you know, in your family tree, there's slaves.
I don't know if they're
but
from
you don't
Africa.
know whether they were black
I
slaves
don't know if they
or
were
whether
from
they were white
Africa or not.
slaves.
Off the top of my head, I'm sure I could research that and find out, but I don't know off the top of my head. That's all I'm saying, and I don't want to. I don't want to pretend I know and then be wrong. Does that make sense?
And indentured servants and slaves are two different things. So, I mean, when you say that you were a descendant of slave, the first thing that anybody thinks is you're saying that you have black people in your lineage who were slaves. And, you know, when somebody looks at you, that they would be skeptical of that. But I know plenty of white people who do have black heritage as well. So that's why I was asking you, is this a black slave?
I just don't know. But like, so even let's say, right, hypothetically, I don't want to stolen valor this or anything, but let's say hypothetically 300 years ago in my genealogy, I do have black descendants of black slaves in my family tree. Just after 300 years, I look how I look, right? Do I get money?
A great question. I think since reparations is something that's lineage based, we would have to take into account your lineage. When you say that you're a descendants of slaves, but you're also the descendants of slave masters, are you claiming that you are mostly a descendant of slaves and some of your slave family members were then raped by slave masters? Are you saying half your family was white European slave owners and the other half were black that were slaves? So, I mean, you'd really have to take a look into your own lineage to see what you might qualify for. Because again, we're not saying that anybody who was brown skin or anybody who claims to be a descendant of slaves, we're talking about documented paperwork.
Okay, that's all I wanted. Darius, please.
Yeah, so I was going to say, before you added the caveat that you said the hypothetical, well, what if they were descendants of West Africans? It was kind of a non sequitur to me. And the reason being is because the conversation itself was not about whether or not you had Slavic ancestry or Germanic ancestry that was enslaved to Romans or even Ottoman people. It was about whether or not you were a West African descendant and currently living in America and can trace your lineage back 7 or 8 generations at the absolute least to whether or not you were a slave or not.
Yep.
Wait, do the Romans owe me money? I just wanted to ask.
A lot of people
Take
are
that
owed
up with
money
the
today.
Romans.
Take that up with the Romans. What about the Mongolians? Should I send a demand letter to the
This
Mongolians?
is called whataboutism. For the man who earlier claimed
So
that
the reason why this is not what about
Romans. What about the Mongolians? Okay.
I'll explain why this is not whataboutism. The reason I agree with you. So these examples that I'm bringing up, the point that I'm trying to make with bringing these up is I'm looking for a principal endpoint. My question for you is, how far back, when you're measuring the injustice, how far back do we have to go? That's the purpose of me asking those questions. If you have a justified reason, well, we stop at 400 years because that's what we do. If you have some kind of justified reason for that, then I won't bring up the Mongolians again. But my question for you is why?
We're talking about slavery in America, then why are you talking about Mongolians and Romans?
I just explained. I'm looking for an endpoint. How far back do we have to go when it
If we're
comes to
talking
correcting
about
injustices.
slavery in America, then why would you move the
Say it
goalposts to
slowly,
include
Lacto. This
things
guy's
that
a bit
happened
close. Say it slowly,
before
please.
slavery in America?
Why are you just talking about slavery in America?
He did.
Because that's what we're talking about getting reparations for, dumbass.
Well, okay. So under this principle of correcting injustice, because I'm guessing that's the underlying principle here of reparations, why don't you apply this to things that were earlier?
Europe's because it is
Because
slow.
we don't give a damn about what the Romans did to Europeans. That's not our fight. Just like reparations is not your fight or the Somalians' fight.
Oh, it's my fight if I'm paying for it. I mean,
Goddamn right. Tell him, brother.
Shout out to Pretty Liddy. Thank you for the super chat. She says slavery is capitalism and can be racism. Being it's a lineage thing, it's a slippery slope. How about Black Wall Street though? Their grandbabies are there to speak on it. Facts. Many
Let's
things
give them
has happened
14
in recent
trillion.
history.
by the way,
I have a question that I've been
270
holding on to
trillion
for a
is
minute.
crazy.
So Wick, if I'm able to ask a
Yeah,
question.
please, Mike, go ahead.
Right. So I find it interesting that earlier when I made the statement that African immigrants such as the Somalian man benefit from foundational Black Americans, he tried to laugh it off as if there's no benefit that they get from us. And in actuality, when they flee Somalia and move to America, they get a $600 a month stipend from the United States government that's paid by taxpayers. So my first question for the pirate is, do you believe it's wrong for us to give $600 a month to Somalian refugees?
Don't give them money. Send them back to Mogadishu right now. Send them niggas back. The fuck? Why are you trying to flee the struggle, nigga? Send them back.
Wait, hold on. So if I understand you, you're saying that it's wrong for the Somalian pirates to get that $600 a month stipend, that they should be sent back, but you're a Somalian that fled to the Middle East, so the Middle East should also send you back.
No, I was never a refugee. If your assumption is that every African is a refugee, that's
I'm not
the white
saying
man
you're a
in you.
refugee. I said you fled. Whether you're doing it under the guise of better
I was
opportunities,
born,
whether
I
you're
was
doing it
born,
under
I
the
was
guise of
born and raised in the
education.
UAE. Wait, I was born and raised in the UAE. What did I flee?
Excuse me, your mother and father fled.
No, they didn't flee. My mother was
So
in
your
the UAE since she was
grandparent.
9 years old. And, oh, so your grandparents. Oh, let's go back. You know what? I want you to go back to
How
my
did the Somalian end up in the Middle
grandparents.
East? How did the Somalian end up in the Middle East if you didn't migrate there?
My father booked a flight ticket to Egypt and
Well,
then to
that I have
then
someone that
to
brought
UAE.
up an interesting question in my chat, and I'm curious what you all think. Are Somalians allowed to use the N-word?
Hey, no,
Yes.
that's great. I've actually no, stop. Who said yes? No.
Quick.
I've been thinking about it, right? Genuinely, right? I've been thinking about it. I was like, Pokemon can't say it. She's Moroccan. Why should I be able to say
Yeah,
it? I'm
why?
East African, sure, right? Is it because
Should I
have
be
more
kicking
melanin
you
than
off for
her?
saying that, Karantos?
True, like maybe, honestly, why should I say it, right? I mean, if Michael could say it, anybody could say it. Honestly, Wick, you could say it if Michael's fucking say it.
I feel like I have a nuanced opinion on
I
this.
mean, I'd call
and I
you a
wanted everybody to
sand
hear me
nigga,
out.
but other than
Darius.
that, I don't really drop the N-bomb a lot.
Darius.
Darius, go ahead.
I was gonna say, okay, as long as it's not with an ER at the end and it's with an A at the end, I don't care who says it.
That's not true. I couldn't say it. There's no way any of you would tolerate me saying it.
If you want to say it, say it right now.
No, do not. I am on
Say it.
Twitch.
I'm not saying
I am
it.
on
I'm not saying
Twitch
it.
and
Wait,
Twitch.
wait,
Just real
Are
quick,
you
this
not
is
saying it
serious. I will
because you
mute
don't
you
want
all
to
for
say
this,
it?
right?
I'm
Real
not saying
quick,
it.
Lactoid, no one on this panel that looks like me and Lactoid gets to say it because Twitch will kick me off. And
You're not part of the tribe.
I need to make my bag. Okay.
He's trying to set you up with.
Which is so
Trying to
crazy.
take the
I
white
think
man
they
down.
even kicked off 𝕵𝖎𝖎𝖙𝖘𝍍 for saying the N-word, right?
Because their eyes are too
She's
wide.
she's very white passing.
No, I'm
She's very
joking.
white
I'm just
passing.
joking.
No, I was
But,
gonna say.
but anyways, I still had another question for the Somalian.
Darius, she's white passing, yet she looks like Micah. Why could he say the N-word then?
Because I don't
Yet he
care
won't
who
take
says
off
it.
his mask and show us how much bleaching he's done to his face. Anyways, Mr. Somalian Pirate, here's my second question.
Bro,
Are
your
you
people
only
wear weaves.
against
Your people tried to act white. What are you talking about?
only against reparations for African Americans, or are you against reparations in general? Do you believe that Somalians should get reparations?
No, I don't. That's why I told you when you asked me that dumbass question, I was like, no, even though those
Okay, so
situations
your
are
answer.
completely different.
Here's my last question for you. Do
Yeah,
you
I'm consistent,
know
unlike your dumbass, but yeah, go
paying
ahead.
reparations to Somalians if you guys did fight for reparations? Do you know who the guilty parties would be?
No, first of all, when you say reparations
answer's
for
no. Okay,
Somali,
so a man who doesn't even know his own
wait,
country's history is over here trying to tell us of ours. That's my point, and I
second. So you Googled my history and you think you know about it, right? You know
know
nothing
more
about
about the country than
Somalia.
you do. Somalian
more-
living out in the UAE.
You know more about
Well,
the
out in
country
the
than I do.
UAE,
Then, okay,
they
then
have
name the six.
they have this
Then
thing
name
that they do
then name the
where
6
they
major
get
tribes. Then
these
go ahead. No,
African
go ahead. Since
immigrants
you
to
know
come
more
out
than
to
me, go ahead. Name
Dubai
the 6.
and other
Name ahead.
countries to exploit
Go
them as
ahead.
cheap labor in
Name
their caste
the
system.
6
And you're
major
one of them.
tribes.
You're up here
Yeah, I'm
talking
one.
so bold with the
Yeah,
ski mask
I'm
on
one of
the
them.
internet,
I'm one
and
of
you're
them.
out
I'm one of
there
them rich Middle
being a
Easterns. Yeah.
bellhop, some wealthy
Listen,
Arabs.
Listen,
Okay.
yeah, you know what? I'm
Right.
one of them rich Middle Easterns, you know, like that lives
You're
a
a rich
very
Middle
comfortable life
Eastern.
in Dubai. Yeah, I
Your
do.
background
You know,
says you're not rich.
my
Them
background says
dingy
that I'm not rich.
curtains,
Why so?
dirty twin-size bed behind you.
Okay,
Bro,
what
you
does
Okay,
that
ain't
got to
never
do with
okay,
reparations?
okay, okay, both of you, both of you.
Up behind you
casting
from
couch to
Both of you,
fucking
okay, this
side.
is no longer productive. I do want to hear from one of our new guests on the show. Eben, is that how you say your name? Eben or Eben? I'm not sure. Eben Phil's posting. You've been wanting on. What do you have to say? What do you have to say?
Now, I was letting them go ahead and argue. I didn't want to sound like another chimp adding in because you got these black dudes up here already chimping out. So since they the fake black dudes that's in
Do you
here,
have
and
a
they up here
camera,
chimping
sir?
out.
Just out of
You turn on
curiosity.
your camera.
What you say?
Can you turn on
Your
your
camera,
camera for
boy.
us?
No, he's black.
Oh,
He's
no,
black.
I
He's
turn on the
black as
camera. I
hell.
got you. I'm really
He
black.
looks,
I'm
looks
from
like
Baltimore.
Okay, fair enough.
Like
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm really black. Yeah, I'm a real black dude. These, I don't know. Respect to
he's
the
real
light skinned
black.
brother. Respect to
He
the
has a
light skinned
red
brother, but
do-rag. Look at him,
Toronto's is a
y'all.
fake black for
Hey,
sure.
bro,
I
you
don't
serious?
even know why he was
40-inch
throwing the
wavy
light skinned
lace
brother
front
under
in
the
his
bus
head. He
like
real
that.
black.
But
Y'all.
I ain't
Look at
come
him.
here to chimp out with them. I'm gonna mute up and wait till it's a real, something I
Mute
can
up.
add in on. You feel
Well,
me?
up,
this
boy.
is why I'm giving you space right now, sir, because I'm curious what your thoughts were on reparations and justice in general. So if you'd like to give us your thoughts, and we can kind of discuss that.
Quataris.
Well, to be honest, as an American that's living in the United States now, I could care less about reparations. For real. We don't need a
No
handout.
enters the chat.
We don't need a handout, for real. Especially
Go
since
ahead.
there's so many whites complaining about it coming out of their personal banks. They so greedy. And they made so much off of free profit. But look, I was wondering if they could just let us have all of the profit they make off of the black men in prison, and we would be straight. Oh, and reverse some of those crimes that they lock us up for a little bit longer than they do white people. Fix that 100-to-1 law they had. If they fix those two,
Wait.
they'd be good. We don't need
We
no
spend
reparations.
way more.
Ho. I got one more. Let us get all the liquor licenses inside of the ghettos. That's all we
my
need.
gosh.
That's
He
all we
wants
need.
to be
We'll be
able to
good.
sell
We
more
don't need
liquor,
no
y'all. He
handouts.
wants to
Just
be
let
able
us
to
get
get
our
on
own
the
community
money
back.
back straight.
Although he's more reasonable than dumbass Michael. You're laughing at him, although he's more reasonable than
Lord.
Michael.
It's less than it's less than 270 trillion. You make a good point.
That's a good start.
It's a good start.
You're
At
right.
least,
You're like,
at
they
least
should
we're
just get a liquor's
somewhere.
license, and they can benefit.
Name-
At least we're back on the
prison
topic of
industrial
reparations, guys, which is where this conversation was supposed to be in the first place.
We're trying.
But yeah,
Y'all do
so
know
I
people
don't
in the
really
ghetto
care
don't
who
care
says
about
the N-word.
reparations. Y'all do know get people in the trenches don't talk about reparations at all.
You're the
Oh,
de
they care about
facto
liquor
leader
More
of
white
people in
people
the
are
ghetto.
talking about them. I'm in
Some
Baltimore,
random
believe me.
Negro in
I feel
The
like,
Baltimore
okay,
whole world
okay,
knows
but
Baltimore.
yeah,
It's been
oh
used
my
as
God,
the
I want to
shithole
talk
Only
about
the
for the
suburban
internet.
ass Democrat ass pussy ass black people talk about it. I know.
but I wanted to talk about.
Serious,
I
please.
had a few questions. What would reparations look like? Why couldn't reparations look like something like universal free college? Why couldn't reparations look like something like bureaucratic enforcement to ensure blacks have a certain, like again, like for affirmative action, but more strictly enforced?
Yeah.
It's because they want money,
things-
Darius. They want money.
I understand that, but okay, but we have to.
Does free labor get paid out in college funds? I'm
We
confused.
have to be willing to make
Where's
compromises
this weird
because we
ass
live in a
argument coming
representative
from? This
republic.
is nutty.
No.
Hey, ho. I got another defense. Let's come up with this. We don't want no cash. Let's get free labor from white people until they pay off the reparations. How about that? We can start now.
Question. Stop. Question. How much? No, first
Yes,
two
sir.
questions for you, sir. Two questions
Yes,
for you,
sir.
Eben. Is it Eben or Eben? First of all,
EBAN.
EBAN.
Early birds
Okay,
all
I'll do
night.
my best.
It's actually a weird ass acronym or whatever the fuck you
Okay.
want to call it.
EBAN. How much labor do I have to do to be square on these reparations? Like, how many hours do I have to work? And second of all, does this count? Having you on my show, does this count towards my allotment for you?
Hell yeah. I'm going to actually pay you double overtime because I'm going to be lenient as your boss. And we only need a couple $100 hours from any white that's willing to step up. You know, we patient.
Gotcha.
It ain't that much work to do. The United States is already filled up with most. I mean, what they gonna give us some land in Nevada or some shit? We don't want that much shit. We just need a couple basketball courts, a couple swimming pools, and shit.
Yes,
We'll be all right.
A couple of strip clubs too.
Some high rises. Couple high-rise
yeah,
projects. There you go.
Everything you're saying is more reasonable than Michael's.
Well,
fucking dumbass
I want
50
to
trillion.
I want to
Honestly,
get Michael in on
say-
this because I'm curious. Mike, what about that? What about like direct investments into specifically communities that are populated by African American descendants of slaves, right? Would instead of a check, if there was some sort of work program or if there was some sort of like renovation toward community renovation, would that be enough? Or would that be a good substitute for you? And if not, why not, please?
Honestly, I would have to have 𝕵𝖎𝖙 qualify his statements because on the one hand, he said that he doesn't believe in reparations, and then in the next breath, he's saying that white people should be our slaves. So I'm confused.
I'm a little confused
Those
too.
are
I'm going
just
to be real with
ideas
you.
to push the conversation forward, yo. It's like almost like sketch comedy for real. But I'm tired of hearing the same damn ideas about it from dumbass blacks. That sounds stupid.
Well, the only thing that I was trying to get to the
That's
point,
the
we can talk
man
about
living in
healthcare
the
reform.
projects of Baltimore. Okay.
We can talk about healthcare
Projects.
reform, poverty
Hey yo,
reform.
hey yo, look behind me in my camera. You think this shit work projects? That boy don't know what he talking. I got a whole.
Oh wait, he decorated his
He in the
walls with
projects.
some
That boy in a
Supreme
storage
merchandise.
unit. That boy in a
This
storage
middle-aged
unit, and I
man
got more.
bought some
Look at
Supreme
what I got right
merchandise
here,
to put
y'all.
onto his
This
walls
hey yo,
to
look,
hide
this
the
is
fact
designer
that he's in
toy.
Section 8
Do
right
he
now.
know about what's going on
Congratulations.
right here?
This middle-aged
Hey, yo,
man
tell him what's
has
going
an
on in
action
here.
figure Barbie doll on his microphone.
No.
and
Look,
some action figures
this shit is
behind
considered
him
art.
to try
Anybody
to
in the chat
distract
know that
from
this
the
is
fact
high.
that
This
he's
is
in
designer art
Section 8
right here.
now.
This
Come
shit
on.
is worth
African Americans
valuable
right
money.
now, relax. Stop being
I
African
don't want to
Americans
chimp
right now.
out with
Black
that
on black
ignorant
violence is
dude,
not
though.
good. Black on black
I'm in the
violence is not good
projects,
right
though.
now. You're living your
I'm in the
stereotypes.
projects. Say
Guys,
less.
why
I'm
can't
in
we
the
talk about
projects.
In
pop-
my
I see the
chat,
red bandana.
See, he
I see
talking
the
about
red
me
enough.
wearing this
Stop.
bandana.
let me see
Stop.
who it
Why can't we
was.
talk about poverty uplift programs and healthcare reform?
Shout out
Why
to
do we have to
Carl.
resort to
Carl
this?
says, tell the 𝕵𝖎𝖏 dude to
He
take
might
his
be
bucket hat
chimp
off.
out.
Bet he won't. Yeah, I bet he won't.
We can talk about why can't we talk about poverty uplift programs and redistributed public policies instead have to resort to this buffoonery? Like we can make so much more progress with the platform that we currently have here.
Honestly, no. Wick, what you said is reparations. That if I were to ever be behind reparations, that's the one that makes sense. Actually investing into African American communities, actually investing into places that they predominantly live in, actually providing them with courses on how to
Earlier,
educate
you said
themselves
you
on
don't
certain
believe
things.
in any
I
reparations at
said
all.
if. I
Now
said
you're
if, you
backtracking?
stupid ass bitch.
Oh,
Now you're backtracking.
If.
Again,
You know,
Wick,
you know
Wick, I'm
English?
pretty
Does
sure
he
you
know
heard me
English?
ask him clear as day.
Does
Do
he
you
know
believe
English?
in no reparations for anybody? Do you think Somalians should get reparations? And he
I
said
said
no. But
Wait,
now
am I
he's
high?
saying that Black Americans should get some form of
Wait, am I
reparations.
high?
Make
I
it make
said
sense.
if. Wait, Wick, did I not say
So
if
he
I were
doesn't
to ever
believe
be
that his
behind
own
any form of
countrymen of
reparations?
Somalia deserve reparations, but he thinks that we do. Make it make sense.
Okay, so Wick, did I not just say that if I were to ever be behind any form of reparations for African Americans, this would be the type of reparations I'd be behind? I'm pretty sure I qualified it with if I were to ever be behind it, right? Because this actually makes more sense than
Would you
giving
ever be
people
behind
200.
Somalian reparations? Yes or no?
I would never be behind any form of reparations, but if this were to be actually represented and it were to actually be fucking reality, then you know what? I might give it a thought or two. I'd still
This
probably
man's
kind of feel
country
some
is
type of
so
way about
down
it. because
bad.
it-
His
Yeah,
parents
you
fled
know
to
what?
go
Guess
to
what?
the
Guess what? Guess what? Guess
UAE,
what?
and he
Guess what?
doesn't
Guess what?
believe
Guess
that
what?
Somalians
I
should
don't
get
ask
any
for the
kind of
help of the white man.
rectification,
God bless
any
me with
kind of
dignity and
reparations
self-respect.
from the
Something that
British,
your people
from the
are
Italians.
clearly
He
lacking in
thinks that
abundance.
Kratos!
Somalians
God
are
bless
out
me and my
there
people
trying
with
to
honor,
raid
dignity, and
naval
self-respect.
ships, hold
That we
Okay.
people
don't get on
ransom
our
for
knees and
hostages.
grovel and
Come on,
beg the
guys.
white
The
man.
name calling
This
isn't helping us
massacre.
out
Yeah,
here.
there we go.
We're making
Okay.
ourselves look really bad.
Karantos, you've asked for my help, a white man, many times on this panel. You've asked for my help several times to mute people, to help you get your words in edgewise. I feel that you are perfectly capable of getting the words in that you want to speak, whatever you want to speak. You're a grown-ass man. You demonstrated that you're careful. Mike, dude, you're just making it go longer, right? You're just making it go longer when you take these swipes. We got to stop with that. I want to give the mic to Darius and to Lactoid and then to Darius. Lactoid has probably somewhere he has to go soon. That's why I want to give him a closing statement, and I want to pass it off to Darius. So, Lactoid,
Yeah,
give us your
no,
closing thoughts.
Perfect. Thank you, Wick, so much for having me on. Thank you all for everyone who talked to me. I do think that initially a lot of my points went unrebutted, so I'm going to let those stand on their own. But I wanted to, before she left, unfortunately, I couldn't bring it up. I wanted to point out, I want you all to do research on ADOS as an organization, that the organization that she's a panel member of. They openly support blood and soil arguments. They question whether or not Kamala Harris is actually black. They're vehemently anti-immigrant, and they're accused of just like the worst kind of racism over and over and over again. Terrible organization. I wish I could have brought those accusations to her while she was here.
Sources.
Unfortunately, she had to leave. Like I said, all of you, I highly suggest you look into how terrible ADOS actually is as an organization.
Reading right now? Cite your sources.
This is my closing. They are borderline a Nazi organization. Now that that's said, I really appreciate again your time. You can find me at 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you so much.
Before you leave, please cite your sources. Where did you just read that from?
I just said Google it. Google it.
Yep,
Do you want to give a link? No, just real quick.
Tell us what source
Do you want to give a link in chat?
Yeah, I'll drop a link in chat. Yeah.
Drop a link in the
chat.
chat. Please do.
Okay. Chicken shit.
Have a good day.
See you guys later.
Guys, this speaks volumes.
At least I'm not part of a Nazi organization.
Blacktoid.
The white supremacist
what the hilarious is when the Patrice chick was saying all that shit, nobody was allowed to fucking give it a rebuttal. Why is this nigga Michael talking? Shut up, bitch.
Also, Somalian pirates. Why don't you go find some jollof rice or some fufu?
Okay. Look, there. We gotta get to it. We gotta get to some actual conversation, please, for the love of God. Can we get to some actual conversation? I don't know.
Yes.
First of all, Brianna Wu, thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Hey,
I don't know why you decided voluntarily to come. But I wanna pass the mic to you
I've been
quick.
watching this. I wanted to calm temperatures down. I wanted to just quell the waters, pour a little oil on troubled waters. Yeah, I was hoping to share my point of view of why I do support reparations. And it's actually because I think it's in my best interest. And I just wanted to share that argument. So something I saw in Mississippi growing up, in a way I think you don't see in the rest of the country, was really the legacy of Civil War. Where there really is this historical divide in the way that white people have privilege and opportunity in the way that black people did not. And that manifested itself in a lot of ways with policing and who was elected to government and who had opportunity to go to college, just a host of different ways. And what I've grown to realize as an adult is that slavery is really the original wound of our country. And we're not the first society to deal with this before. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, Germany did a lot to basically make reparations for Jewish people. To this day, Mercedes-Benz has a program where they donate a certain number of cars to Jewish people. Germany really tried to move past this pain of what they've done as a country. And because of that, this is not festering in their society as an open wound, the way that racism and the legacy of slavery is this open wound here in America. So I think, very much in my own selfish interest, I dream of an America where we can kind of acknowledge the past, we can make amends for it, and we can go forward together as a country. And I think that us doing that in the form of some motion makes sense. Is that financial? Is that the best plan? I'm not completely sold on that, but I do think as a country we need to do something and move forward together.
So I want to give Darius here the mic, and then I want.
Wait, I'm about to leave, Wick. So let me
Karantos, give your. Yeah, I know. Okay. Finish up so you can go.
Okay, so Michael, I hope to God you get your black card. I hope you get your black card soon. You know what I mean? I know house niggas are looked down on. You know, I know house niggas are looked down on. So, but I'm praying for your black card.
Allow those Arabs to stop exploiting you.
So he's gonna look out for you. Anyways, listen, you can find me at twitch.tv/Krantos.
One day you feel enough to show your face, and
that's pretty much it. Listen, I agree. Give people
Karantos,
$70 trillion.
Karantos, just real quick. Stop.
Tether.
Karantos, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming on. You guys can follow him at twitch.tv/KarantosQ.
He has 3,000 subs, y'all. He needs some more. Somebody go get his numbers up. He got 40 people watching right now. The numbers are looking real low.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you for having me on, Wick.
Thank you.
Hi.
Michael, take care, buddy.
Hi, Tether baby. Hi, Tether baby.
Bye-bye.
Take the ski mask off one day.
Oh God,
Hey,
she's
so
so
the
painful.
only thing that I was going to say,
So
the only
painful.
thing that I was going to say, guys, is that
Yeah.
first of all, the petty back and forth is just not productive. We can have a serious conversation about what reparations could look like in terms of free college or educational reform or poverty uplift programs or investing in social welfare programs and engaging in different legislative acts that would lead us to that would redistribute the means of production and help out the poor and the working class people, which would be disproportionately advantageous towards the descendants of slaves. But the petty back and forth, the calling people tethering, the diaspora wars. This is why we're actively not making progress, not only as a country but as Black people, as a monolithic entity.
Maybe you're late to the party, but the reason why he was called a tether is because we have a Somalian hiding out in the Middle East who's trying to speak ill of Black Americans, trying to speak ill about our plight, and trying to negate that we should get reparations when he has no dog in that fight. He's not over here on a panel with Jewish people telling them they shouldn't get reparations. He's not on a panel with Japanese saying they shouldn't get reparations. But for some reason, these African immigrants have such vitriol and contempt for foundational Black Americans. I don't get why.
I look, I understand that, but he does not need to be his.
You understand there is no but.
Hold on. No, but hold on for a second though, Mike. The only thing I was going to tell you is then we don't need to make him the focal point of this conversation. I mean, for one, was he qualified enough to have?
He insulted me, I responded.
I understand.
When he continued to try to insult me, I spoke over him and responded. Everybody can see that, but you apparently.
No, I understand what you're saying, Mike. My whole point to you is that somebody like him wouldn't have been productive in this conversation in the first place. So we have to keep the conversation at reparations instead of having somebody derail.
Did you invite him, or did he just join under his
No,
own?
I invited Karantos. I thought that I did not expect it to go the way it did. Let's say that.
He is so bad.
He's not
always
qualified.
he's terrible. He's terrible.
He's not qualified to have this conversation, and his ethnicity.
The reason I came is because he's so bad. I felt bad for Black people. Him being on this panel speaking for Black people, I knew he was on some bullshit. That's the only reason I pulled up, y'all.
Speaking for Somalians that live in the Middle East, because he don't speak for us, and that's the problem with these African immigrants. This is why we call them tethers, because they have no dog in the fight. They should not be a part of the conversation, but they tether themselves and attach themselves to our topics of discussion.
I'm glad I learned that from you today, Mike. I'm going to use that. I'm glad I learned that.
This isn't actually an interesting point. When we talk about who is qualified to discuss these things, right? What does that look like? Is it only people who are African descendants of slaves that are qualified to discuss it? Can I discuss it? Like, who is allowed, quote unquote, to have these discussions and to participate?
Say that's very easy to answer. If we're talking about reparations in America, I think the only people qualified to speak about it would be Americans, not foreigners, not African immigrants. Americans.
I can agree with Mike on that. I mean, here in the United States or anywhere else in the world, no one else speaks upon reparations for Jewish people except for Jews and Germans, right? So. Here
really,
in the United
Germans
States,
don't even want to speak about it. They want to leave it to the Jewish people to speak about it because they realize that the optics are even odd with Germans speaking about
just disagreeing with it. Yeah. So again, I agree with Mike there. I mean, I don't even think this is a black or white thing. I think this is an American thing because, again, we have universal suffrage here, and in a representative democracy with universal suffrage, we have to go through the path of the least amount of resistance, of the path of the least amount of bloodshed to have the most efficacious results possible.
Interesting.
This is the phenomenon that me and my viewers have witnessed over the last couple of years that Wick, you're most likely not privy to. You will very seldom ever see a Black American discussing African reparations or whether Black Brits should get reparations or anything that has to do with these foreigners' plights. But for some reason, they always want to be a part of our conversations. Well, they always want to sneak into and crash the proverbial barbecue when they weren't invited.
How is this different between us talking about Ukraine and Russia? Right? I'm not Ukrainian. I've never been to Ukraine.
Because our government inserted themselves in that conflict and we are paying out billions to Ukraine, so Americans have a right to speak about it. America as a country was not affiliated with what's going on with the war in Ukraine, and you're right, we should stay out of their business.
I will fundamentally disagree with you. I think everyone has a right to speak on whatever they want. I think that it's okay to have opinions even when you're not directly involved, and I frankly want to know people's opinions, even if they aren't directly involved. Now, I get your point that they probably shouldn't weigh as much as those who don't have any quote unquote skin in the game. But yeah, I think it's okay to get opinions from people who are not involved directly. And that's my thoughts here. But I wanted to pass it to Brianna Wu. She looks like she wants to say a few things.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, I'm just listening. I think this is, Mike, I hope I can ask you this directly. I mean, I'm on record. I support reparations.
Ask me anything.
This is where I really fall. I don't know if you've watched me much in the Twitch Paul space, but I try to be really pragmatic. Like I run a PAC. I'm a former candidate. So when people bring me a policy objective that they're trying to get past, my first question is always like, how do we actually get that? And here in this country right now, you cannot even get half the country to admit that Black people face structural like racism, right? Like they're living in a complete reality. We've seen this insane rise of organized white supremacy in a way that is truly unprecedented, even from what I saw in the South growing up. What is kind of what is the pathway that you see to getting Congress eventually to appropriate this money and then, basically get it to people? What is the pragmatic pathway for this?
That's a great question. I think that would have been an excellent question for 𝕾𝖎𝖎𝖙, but unfortunately you guys didn't have a time to engage in discourse. Off the top of my head, I would say that what we first have to start with is having the discussion. Right. Half of the country doesn't even want to have the discussion. Half of the country fights to even acknowledge the history and the wrongdoings that our nation has propagated. So a perfect example is just the other day, I'm not sure if you guys saw, and I'm not sure which organization did this or whether this was funded by our own government, but now there is yet another Jewish campaign called Stop Jewish Hate. And they're sharing some blue circle, and they're running around doing national campaigns and advertisement on cable network televisions talking about stop Jewish hate, stop Jewish hate, stop Jewish hate. Oh, on the surface level, you would say, has there really been a rise in Jewish hate? Are we really reverting back to...
There has been.
No, Mike. I'm not done. I'm speaking, sarcastically right there. But the point is, whoever controls the narrative is the one who has the power. So clearly, if we look at the Jewish community, have organizations in place, they're also backed by our government to where they can affect change, they can get things done. I mean, quite frankly, if you even speak ill on a Jewish person, you're immediately labeled anti-Semitic, and there's real world consequences to that. Another example would be the Asian community. Asians in California were attacked randomly a few times, and they got some kind of anti-Asian hate crime bill passed just like that, because they have political power. So I think that Black Americans would have to improve upon the political power they currently have. I would say right now they have little to none. For the most part, we've been exploited by the Democratic Party. We have extreme xenophobia within our own community, where we feel that if a Black man is a Republican, then they're like some Sambo or some Uncle Tom. So there's a lot that needs to be had around the conversation, and I think that it needs to be had internally within the Black community, getting rid of some of these stigmas and stereotypes, and it also needs to be had with the American populace as a whole. And right now, I think that we are part of the solution by having this public discourse, but we need to be having this conversation 100-fold.
I would definitely... sorry, go ahead, please.
Because there are a few things that Mike said that I want to address there. So number one, Mike, I agree with a significant portion of that, especially when you said that, when a Black man votes Republican or when he speaks out against the Democratic Party, which, again, as you said, they have exploited us. I mean, again, they've represented some of our interests as is to be expected in a representative democracy, but they've exploited the Black vote for almost nothing in return. When you look at not even just the ghettos and the project, but I mean, let's take a look at the lack of progress Black people have made over the past 45 years. There's something to be said there about why we're still voting Democrat when we're gaining very little from it. Number one. Number two, there's a lot of xenophobia in our community. If you ask me, Black people are the most prejudiced people here in America. We have we're very socially conservative. We're also very homophobic. We're very religious people. Some of these issues are deeply ingrained into Black people. So independent of structural racism here in America, we still have our own cultural issues that we need to fix. The internalized racism, the colorism, the sexism, black men's misogynoir, all need to be rectified. right? So there's a lot to. I mean, even this can all be packaged within the context of reparations, right? Because a part of reparations could be something like educational reform, or not even just post education, but like cram schools, after schools, or recreational study programs for all people that would disproportionately be advantageous towards Black people to rectify social, historical, and socio-political inequality.
Yeah. Can I jump on that? Because I really agree with what you just said. And Mike, this comes to your point. I obviously don't know what it's like to be Black, but I can say I think women who are a huge voting bloc for the Democratic Party as well, I feel like we have been taken for granted in a very serious way. When you look at losing abortion, it was very clear the Democratic Party did not have a plan. I was really irritated by a tweet that Chuck Schumer put out last week, where he's standing up in front of a bunch of women with this big sign that says ERA, and he's like, vote for us in 2024, we're going to pass it. And it's like, bitch, where were you when you had a majority? Like, this has been sitting on your desk and you're so cynically using it for an election year like strategy. I know you don't value women because you haven't done any real like legislation on it in my lifetime, right? So I really feel that. I do think that strategically it really, really leaves you in a hard place because the Republican Party, in my view, is a fascist movement. It has really devolved into that after Donald Trump. And for me as a woman, it's like, God, I know the Democrats aren't going to be riding into town with like the ERA and like a big push to get pro-abortion judges. But the other alternative is literally fascism, in my view.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd ask, what is something today that the Democratic Party could do that would help the Black community here in America the most, right? Let's take reparations for the moment off the table. What policy or legislation other than reparations would you like to see passed by the Democratic Party today?
Oh, I can give you one really quickly.
Please.
So something like, first of all, so there are 3,810 communities in America that have water supplies just as bad or worse than Flint, Michigan.
Yep.
These communities are going to be disproportionately more likely to be Black, going to be more likely to be poor. So something like the Build Back Better program from President Joe Biden, this could be something that we could tackle. Or something like the fact that we still have lead pipes, lead paint, asbestos in our homes. Things like the fact that the ghettos, look at the infrastructure in poor Black communities, right? We already have some kind of fundamental framework to work with there to rectify some of the socio-political and socio-historical inequality here in the Black community with some of the programs that we already have here.
Yeah. Tell me if I'm on. Yeah. Tell me if I'm on the right track with this. Like when it comes to this stuff, I always try to think structurally. Y'all tell me if I'm on the right track here. It seems to me that I sure know a lot of Black women that've gone to get a master's degree or a PhD because that education is like their defense against, like a workplace is going to be incentivized to not take them as seriously. So it seems like structurally, like a kind of a targeted student loan forgiveness, really focused on Black student loan debt. Like, wouldn't that really give an entire generation a real leg up from something that's holding them back? Or am I off base on that?
Oh, you are on base, but
Yeah.
I would say that should be done in conjunction with something that repairs the real estate redlining. For example, not
Yeah.
only should there be easier access to education, um, you know, loan payoff forgiveness, but I think there should also be rent subsidies, down
Yep.
payment assistance programs. I think there should be a blanket personal and professional tax exemption for descendants of slaves. And I think things like that do a lot to also convince Black Americans to quote unquote pick themselves up by their bootstraps. Because if they hear, wait, I now have corporate tax exemption. Wait, I have personal tax exemption. Well, now they're incentivized to learn that tax game. Now they're incentivized to learn how to manage and start a successful corporation.
Yes.
So I think it should be education, health, healthcare, real estate, and also tax exemptions. Those four parts.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Well, yeah.
I'm gonna just
again,
before we get too
also-
off topic, I want to hear from Eban a little bit. He's been quiet here. I wanna ask him the same question. Oh, he might be busy.
I was also going to say something like financial literacy programs as well, which are, which will be beneficial to almost all Americans. Never mind, and I see somebody with comment section here saying our college graduate numbers are too low for student loan forgiveness to uplift the whole of the ADOS community. Well, I feel like a part of reparations will be, college being free for West African descendants in the first place.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
there's something you're going to hear a lot is people saying, well, this one solution is not going to solve the whole problem. You're not going to fix you're not going to fix the legacy of slavery in this country of one program. It's going to be 101% solutions, not 100% solutions. And people are just going to have to get comfortable with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's be fair, there's nothing that will be done that will ever rectify how horrible West African descendants have been treated in this country.
Yeah.
But there are things that we can do as a community, as individual people, and as a monolith to move in the right direction. And I think having a different attitude about race, about social class, and how we go about interacting with one another as Americans, or hell, even just as people. Yeah. So again, this will be a package deal that will be beneficial to, in my opinion, that will be beneficial to all people, especially those that are of a lower class. Again, think something like the fact that there are damn near 4,000 communities that have water supplies just as bad or worse than Flint, Michigan, and most people are not aware of that.
How
the fact that there's
lead still in water. Off of that.
Piggyback real quick, then I have a question for the panel, then we're going to kind of wrap up. But go ahead.
I think that we should also take a page out of the reparations that Native Americans have received. I believe that since we did have swaths of land that were historically Black communities that were infiltrated and destroyed, I know the most popular one would be Tulsa, Oklahoma, but that happened across the nation in droves. I think we also should get tracts of land where we are sovereign. We can have our own federal governance, just like the Native Americans. We can have our own housing and have our own communities. Now, obviously, being indigenous myself, I see that is not the end-all be-all. I can see that even though Native Americans have received quote-unquote reparations, they are still disadvantaged. They are still in squalor for the most part. But I think that would at least be a step in the right direction.
Yeah. So, Mike, come on, man. Let me ask you one really quick question. I'm sorry. I was trying not to laugh as you said that. Mike, most Black people are not going to want to live there, and our most brilliant-minded have already left en masse.
So you're the de facto leader of the Black American
I
community.
never said that.
Respectfully, that's a wild assumption.
Land and told us we can govern ourselves, that we would not want to live there because of
your
your own.
I ain't gonna lie. I'm with Mike on this.
Now, as Black people are already leaving the Black community post Civil Rights Movement en masse, and that has been the case.
There is no Black community, bro. The Black community you speak of are Black folks that live in ghettos, modern day shanty towns.
Yeah, bro.
So what are you talking about? A Black community? We have not had a Black community since.
This some new shit, yo. We always like going to some new shit. Everybody likes some new shit, bro. You gotta roll the dice in some new shit. You building a new city that's actually the reparation city, bro. They not coming. You're crazy.
Oh,
I ain't even gonna lie. That don't even sound right.
Reparation city.
I mean, technically, if we got some land and we got a whole bunch of money and built some a new area, technically that's what it would wind up being.
You guys know about the Chitlin circuit? You guys know when there was segregation that even the white folks came to the ghetto Black parts of town to groove and vibe and party with the Black folk. So not only would Black people want to go, but I think all cultures would want to visit this.
What is
the NFL and the NBA is going to be prevalent there.
I want to talk about this. I want to address this real quick because let's use indigenous as an example here, right? How do we keep these reparation cities, for lack of a better term, from turning into what has happened on reservation lands, where it has been huge structural inequities towards the indigenous people, where they don't have the access to the same infrastructure, right? And part of the reason they don't is because they have been segregated from the white community in that way.
No.
You don't think so?
Wick. Let's not do that, Wick. They are not that way because they've been separated from the white community. They have been that way because they were forcibly placed on reservations that are barren, undeveloped land that nobody wanted. And it just so happens that hundreds of years later, some tribes got lucky and some real estate developers built a subdivision nearby so they can start a casino and the whites can come and spend money with them at the casino. But by and large, the land that Native Americans got are unbuildable, are not something that anybody
They're
would even want to
uninhabitable,
live
man.
in. I mean, right now, if I wanted to, I can go to my reservation in Oklahoma and get a free house. But why do I want to live in the middle of nowhere with no access to education or social services? So if
Are
you
you
want
Native
to ask the
American?
question, how do we do it differently? We would give them prime real estate. We wouldn't give them subprime real estate.
Well,
Okay,
Mike, I have
but
a question.
even
I'm
no,
sorry. This may not
this
be.
doesn't, just real quick, this doesn't address my concern, and perhaps it's my fault for phrasing it poorly. When it comes to community and governmental investment in infrastructure, in education, in housing, and land, and things like these, what is to keep the Black community, right, after segregating themselves off into a single into these cities, reparation cities, what is to keep that inequity from continuing down the line and them just not investing in these cities at all?
The lack of import of crack cocaine. The
Our
country scandal
government
won't.
to
The
fund
country
I mean,
scandal won't be there. The private prisons won't be there. Watch how much those
the
black people
CIA
thrive.
won't be there. The CIA won't be there. The FBI won't be there.
Okay.
Yo,
Nixon won't be there.
yo,
racist
yo.
mortgage
I mean,
financiers
let's be
who
real.
have to go out of their way to show equal housing opportunity logos because it's now mandated by the government because they redline the Black community so terribly. So again, I have a background in real estate, and this goes deep in many different facets
Yeah.
of the financial system.
Can we all give like one big fuck you to Ronald Reagan? I mean, like just like
Yeah.
moment of
He
silence.
was an
Happy to
actor,
do
though, bro.
that.
Why
Happy
you
to do it.
blaming him, bro? He was just an actor in the seat, bro. Come on, you seen him on them horses in the movies,
Yep.
or did you not?
Yeah, can I ask
Yeah,
a really
worst
can I
president
ask a
ever.
really geeky policy question? As long as we're thinking really big about like addressing the legacy of slavery, I think one of the things that's really under discussed when it comes to like policy is difference of healthcare outcomes for Black people versus white people. There was a study that came out that showed that when Black people have a Black doctor, I mean, they get like 10 extra years of life or something like that. Oh, I'm sorry. What was that?
So I want to be a doctor. I majored in genetics and genome sciences at a
Oh, awesome.
university here in Alabama, and I want to be a doctor. And
Congratulations.
yes, absolutely. When Black people
Yeah.
have not only Black doctors, Black real estate officials, Black bankers, Black doctors, we thrive better. I mean, there's not a
100%.
stigma of why are they talking like that. Like 50% of white medical students thought Blacks and whites felt pain at different levels. Like
Sure.
this is why Black women are more likely to have PCOS, cystic fibrosis, things like that. Because when you're dealing with doctors who are not like you, because Black who are
100%.
Slow down a
disproportionately
little
not
bit,
like
bro.
you,
Yeah,
Let me listen to you, bro. You were speaking fast. Slow down
Yeah.
a little bit.
so
Let me
sorry.
hear that. What
I
you
have a
say?
okay. So when Black people are disproportionately less likely to have not only a Black lawyer, Black Black nurse, or anything, like you're dealing with
Yeah,
people who are less familiar
yeah.
with your culture. They're less familiar with your with Black health. Like the reason why I want to be a dermatologist, and I was called shallow for this, right? The reason why I want to be a dermatologist is because there are so few Black dermatologists who know how to deal with Black skin. Like
Oh,
you will have a
wow.
dermatologist going to
Yeah.
Google saying, "Oh, damn. Okay, so how do I deal with like Black psoriasis?
Barbers who
How
don't
do I
even know
do?"
how to
Right.
cut Black hair. Come on. Yeah, come on.
You feel
No,
what I'm saying?
that
So yes,
makes so
absolutely.
much sense.
I'm sorry,
But
Brianna. I'm
yeah,
sorry,
no,
Brianna. This is my first time
it's
meeting you.
it's a
Hello.
great point.
This
But this
is my
is
first time meeting you, so hello.
no,
But
it's great to meet you. But what I was going to say is, as I understand it, and tell me if I'm wrong here, if you look at the totality of what Black people face in the United States, it's easy to focus on like the financial disparity in outcomes. Like here in Boston, Black people have $8 of wealth, literally $8 of wealth, compared to white people. But it's not just money,
yeah,
it's also life outcomes. And that is deeply embedded in our healthcare systems and a whole bunch of other things. So if you're talking about really making up for this legacy of slavery that is literally taking your lives from you, what's kind of the vision for turning around the healthcare system and making like lifespan parity, like more on parity with white people? Yeah.
So after I graduated from college, and then get my medical degree, what I wanted to do was open up different cram schools and after school programs and poverty uplift programs that are, through my own money and through interacting and coordinating with people who are more like me, who are more educated and who would be more well-to-do and more knowledgeable on these subjects, right? We'd be raising awareness through social media, through televised media, through our own media outlets about Black health, like the lack of Black healthcare professionals, the lack of Black lawyers, the lack of Black professors and academicians, who because we have a lack of Black professionals, we have a lack of people who are culturally aware or culturally cognizant, as I'll call it, about our issues, about our hyper-specific needs, right? Because Black people, according to the National Library of Medicine, Black people are more likely to be diagnosed with things like schizophrenia because of genetics, for one, and two, because of, if I'm not mistaken, it was something to the effect of like racism-induced paranoia, right? So these are just things that like non-Black psychiatrists and non-Black psychologists and counselors may not know a single thing about. The reason as to why we may be as paranoid as we are, especially when we're dealing with somebody who's not like us, is because, well, this is like a defense mechanism. Never mind the genetics. Never mind the fact that we're genetically predisposed to things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and depression. Like, yeah, hell, I've had to deal with motherfuckers like you my entire life. I gotta watch you first. You feel what I'm saying? So there's a lot that goes into these things.
Yeah,
You personally, Wick.
I understand. I just thought it was funny. I do want to say,
what did I do? I never owned any slaves. Come on, my ancestors were slaves. Didn't you
Like
hear me tell Mike that earlier?
You're fundamentally a bad person, okay? This is what you are.
Listen, Wick, if you don't feel even an ounce of white guilt right now, Wick, then you are the
I'm
enemy.
going to be real with you. I don't feel guilty for anything. I mean, like, I haven't done anything.
Good.
I only feel like this is a rule I got, just to be personal with you guys. If I didn't do anything to you, I don't feel guilty for what happens to you. I may feel
we don't need
sympathetic,
white guilt.
but
We need white
It's
sympathy.
not
We
about
don't need
guilt,
white
dude. Yeah,
I know,
that's
but
not helpful.
I don't think it
liberals
is
that
either,
are out
but
there-
people yell at me all the time. But I hate to do this, but I do have some other appointments I need to get to. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to give you all a shout out to tell people where they can find you if they want to find you. If my audience liked what you had to say,
And actually, real quick, Wick, I had one question from my audience, if I can, real quick. They wanted to know what inspired you to put this panel together and discuss this topic.
Sure. Well, one of the things that happens, right, is my server sometimes gets into fights because I'm a free speech zone, right? So people from all political persuasions come together and they talk. And reparations came up, and I was like, you know what? This is actually an interesting topic that I haven't heard in a while. So I wanted to get a few people from my community together, and Aaron reached out to me and said, hey, I could get a few people from Mike's community together, and I thought that would be an interesting conversation. And well, you saw what happened, but it was the latter half was interesting.
You basically did the panel with this topic for entertainment purposes.
Yes, and I was interested in the topic. And that's why I did it.
For sure.
That's
Sounds
why I
good.
do all the topics I do, is because I'm interested.
Hey, I got to
in
sign
the
off
topic.
here. If
Please.
we're just giving closing remarks and letting people know where to find us,
Please.
You guys can just Google me, 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙. My live stream on, or excuse me, don't Google me. Search for me on YouTube, 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙. I live stream on YouTube maybe like 3 to 5 days per week, so you guys can catch me over there live.
Go check them out if you like them, gang. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Darius, anything to shout out? Anything to say?
My name's Darius Yancey. I'm a pre-med student at University of Alabama. If you want to know anything more about me, you can add me on Discord at @𝕖𝕖𝕖 or Google me. I'm almost certain that after you get past my mugshot, that there's a lot more about me that you'd be interested in knowing. That's about all I got for you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I always appreciate arguing with you in my VCs. It's always fun. Eban, anything to share with the class? You're muted on your end. We can't hear a word you're saying.
I appreciate y'all having me. I pull up from time to time. I like the conversation myself. I appreciate it. Y'all have a nice day.
Hey, you too, sir. Have a great day. And Brianna, you got a
Stay.
few things
It's
coming
gonna
up.
be a shit show.
You got a few things coming up. I saw your tweet with Pearly Things, just Pearly
Yes,
Things.
that's right.
I'm
that's right.
curious to keep me posted. I'd love to tune in once that happens. And gang, Brianna Wu's actually coming on my show officially on Wednesday to talk about OnlyFans links on Twitch.
Wait, I thought we were talking about hot tub meta.
That
we'll
too.
figure it out. We'll figure it out.
There's a wide net of things.
Frank is going to ask me why I'm watching these streams of half-naked women. I got to tell him, it's for research.
True.
So, can't
True.
help it.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here, Brianna.
Talk to you soon.
We'll see you on Wednesday. Okay, gang. Did you guys like this at all? Honestly, I feel like I don't really drink, but I feel like I need a drink after this. This was a lot. Gang, if you like my content, if you want to support the stream, if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. That always helps the algorithm. If you're on Twitch, follow. Hit that follow button. Throw some subs my way. Throw some bits. I appreciate everything that my viewers do for me. I know. It's a lot. We're going to raid out. Where are we going, gang? Who are we going to? You decide. Prime Kai? Okay, we can go to Prime Kai. Make sure you spam my emotes when you get there. Say hello. Appreciate y'all for coming again. And I will see you guys tomorrow. We'll do our open call-in show. And then Wednesday, we're going to have Tits and Twitch, the hot tub stream extravaganza. OnlyFans, etc. It'll be fun. Tune in. Bye-bye.